Welcome to this evening's exploration of one of gaming's most remarkable and now vanished cultural phenomena. As we settle in together to examine the fascinating world of speedrunning, we embark on a journey through what many cultural historians now consider one of the most unique and mathematically beautiful folk arts ever to emerge from digital culture. Tonight, we'll explore how, in the span of roughly 3 decades, a small community of dedicated players created an entirely new form of performance art that celebrated human precision, mathematical optimization, and the relentless pursuit of perfection within the structured confines of video game code. If you enjoy this type of content, a like or a subscription is always appreciated. It helps our small corner of the internet grow. I invite you to share your own thoughts in the comments below. To understand the profound cultural significance of speedrunning, we must first transport ourselves back to a fundamentally different gaming landscape, one where games were static, predictable entities whose every pixel, every frame of animation, and every line of code remained constant across all players and all playthroughs. This consistency, which we now recognize as the essential foundation that made speedrunning possible, was so taken for granted by players of that era that they could hardly imagine a world where games might adapt, evolve, or respond differently to each individual player. Picture, if you will, the gaming environment of the early 2000s, when speedrunning first began to coalesce into a recognizable community and practice. Games were distributed as fixed products, burned onto discs or cartridges, with their content forever locked in the state their developers had shipped them. A player in Tokyo would experience precisely the same sequence of events, encounter identical enemy patterns, and navigate through environments with identical physics as a player in New York or London. This universal consistency created something unprecedented in human cultural history, a performance space where achievements could be compared with mathematical precision across all barriers of geography, language, and culture. The early speedrunners were, in many ways, digital archaeologists and mathematicians, carefully documenting the precise mechanical behaviors of these virtual worlds. They discovered that games, despite their appearance of dynamic interactivity, were actually vast, complex clockwork mechanisms whose every component could be understood, predicted, and ultimately optimized. Where casual players saw entertainment and narrative, speedrunners saw systems to be analyzed, routes to be calculated, and human limitations to be transcended through perfect execution and deep understanding. The community that emerged around this practice developed its own rich culture of knowledge sharing, mentorship, and collective improvement that bore striking resemblances to traditional crafts guilds or academic research communities. Speedrunners created elaborate documentation systems, frame-by-frame video analyses, and mathematical models that mapped the precise timing requirements for optimal play. They developed specialized terminology, shared techniques across generations of players, and established formal and informal hierarchies based on skill, knowledge, and contribution to the collective understanding of their chosen games. What made speedrunning particularly remarkable as a cultural phenomenon was its complete dependence on human dedication and ingenuity rather than technological assistance. While speedrunners certainly used tools to measure and analyze their performances, the actual execution of a speedrun relied entirely on human reflexes, memory, and the ability to perform complex sequences of inputs with inhuman precision under intense pressure. A world record speedrun represented hundreds or thousands of hours of practice, route optimization, and psychological preparation, all focused on achieving a few seconds or even fractions of seconds of improvement over previous achievements. The mathematical beauty of speedrunning emerged from its intersection of human performance with algorithmic optimization. Speedrunners became experts at identifying the shortest possible paths through complex decision trees, calculating optimal resource management strategies, and discovering unintended interactions between game systems that could be leveraged for competitive advantage. Their routing documents resembled advanced mathematical proofs, complete with contingency planning for different random number generator outcomes and precise timing requirements down to individual frames of game logic. The social aspects of speedrunning created communities that spanned the globe while maintaining intimate, supportive relationships between players who might never meet in person, but shared deep appreciation for the subtle details of particular games and techniques. These communities developed their own internal cultures, with legendary figures whose achievements were celebrated and studied, mentorship relationships that passed knowledge from experienced runners to newcomers, and collective projects that pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible within particular games. Perhaps most poignantly from our perspective in 2035, speedrunning represented one of the last purely human performance arts within digital spaces. While other forms of gaming increasingly incorporated AI assistance, dynamic difficulty adjustment, and personalized content adaptation, speedrunning remained a domain where human skill, dedication, and creativity were the sole determinants of achievement. The community explicitly rejected any form of technological assistance that might compromise the purity of human performance, maintaining strict standards that preserved speedrunning as a celebration of unassisted human potential. The cultural documentation produced by speedrunning communities during their heyday represents one of the most comprehensive records of any gaming subculture. Every significant achievement was recorded, analyzed, and preserved. Tutorial videos, routing documents, and community discussions created an exhaustive archive that now serves as our primary window into understanding how this remarkable practice developed and thrived during its roughly three-decade existence. As we'll explore throughout this evening's discussion, speedrunning represented something unique in human cultural history, a folk art that emerged entirely within digital spaces, developed its own sophisticated aesthetic and technical standards, and created genuine human achievement and community around the pursuit of mathematical perfection within artificial constraints. Understanding speedrunning requires appreciating it as simultaneously a sport, an art form, a mathematical pursuit, and a social community that demonstrated remarkable creativity within the structured limitations of static game code. The story of speedrunning's rise and eventual obsolescence provides profound insights into how human creativity adapts to technological constraints, and how communities can emerge around the most unexpected shared interests and challenges. The emergence of speedrunning as a distinct cultural practice during the early 2000s represents one of the most organic and grassroots developments in gaming history, arising not from commercial design or institutional organization, but from the natural human tendency to find creative challenges and competitive expression within any rule-based system. The early speedrunning community developed through a fascinating process of spontaneous organization, knowledge sharing, and collective standard setting that would establish the foundational principles and practices that would define the culture for decades to come. The technological context of early speedrunning was crucial to its development. Personal computers and gaming consoles of this era possessed sufficient processing power to run complex games while remaining predictable and deterministic in their behavior. The internet was becoming widespread enough to enable community formation and video sharing, but had not yet developed the sophisticated real-time adaptation and personalization systems that would later make traditional speedrunning impossible. This technological sweet spot created ideal conditions for a practice that required both complex games and reliable, shareable documentation of achievements. The earliest speedrunners were typically highly skilled players who had already mastered games through conventional play and began seeking additional challenges within familiar virtual environments. These pioneers discovered that games which had been designed for dozens of hours of normal gameplay could be completed in minutes or hours through deep understanding of game mechanics, exploitation of unintended shortcuts, and perfection of execution timing. The revelation that games contained these hidden depths and possibilities created intellectual excitement that drew in players with mathematical, analytical, and perfectionist mindsets. Video documentation became essential to early speedrunning culture, both for verification of achievements and for educational purposes. The community developed informal but strict standards for what constituted valid documentation of a speedrun, requiring unedited video capture that showed the entire run from start to finish. These videos served multiple purposes. They provided proof of achievement for record-keeping, demonstrated techniques for other runners to learn and improve upon, and created a permanent archive of speedrunning history that could be studied and celebrated by future generations. The knowledge-sharing traditions that emerged during this period reflected the community's academic and collaborative spirit. Speedrunners created detailed written guides explaining optimal routes, precise timing requirements, and execution tips for difficult techniques. They developed standardized terminology for describing game mechanics and speedrunning concepts, enabling precise communication about complex technical topics. Video tutorials became increasingly sophisticated, with frame-by-frame analysis and mathematical explanations of why particular strategies were optimal. Competition within early speedrunning communities was characterized by friendly rivalry and mutual support rather than antagonistic conflict. Runners celebrated each other's achievements and openly shared techniques that might help competitors improve their own times. When world records were broken, the community typically responded with congratulations and excitement rather than resentment or attempts to diminish the achievement. This collaborative competitive culture became one of speedrunning's most distinctive and admirable characteristics. The development of speedrunning categories during this period reflected the community's recognition that different approaches to optimization could create distinct but equally valid forms of competition. Any percent runs focused on reaching the end of the game as quickly as possible through any means available, including glitches and sequence breaks. 100% runs require completing all intended content before finishing. Glitchless categories excluded certain types of unintended shortcuts. These category distinctions enabled runners with different skills and interests to find appropriate competitive contexts while maintaining the integrity of different approaches to speedrunning. Tool development by and for speedrunners represented grassroots innovation that anticipated many later developments in gaming technology. Community members created timing software that could precisely measure run duration, video editing tools optimized for speedrunning documentation, and analysis programs that could examine input timing and execution precision. These tools were typically developed as labor of love projects by community members and shared freely, reflecting the collaborative ethos that characterized speedrunning culture. The international nature of early speedrunning communities demonstrated the universal appeal of optimization and perfect execution that transcended cultural and linguistic boundaries. Japanese players developed techniques that were studied and adapted by American and European runners. Scandinavian communities contributed mathematical analysis and routing innovations. Cross-cultural knowledge exchange occurred through video sharing and forum discussions, with language barriers often overcome through the universal language of demonstrated technique and precise timing. Regional differences in speedrunning culture emerged based on local gaming preferences and cultural approaches to competition and achievement. Japanese speedrunning culture tended to emphasize technical perfection and respectful competition. American communities often focused on innovation and pushing boundaries. European runners frequently contributed mathematical analysis and theoretical optimization. These regional strengths complemented each other and contributed to the global advancement of speedrunning techniques. The emergence of speedrunning personalities during this period created community heroes whose achievements and approaches influenced thousands of other runners. These figures were typically celebrated not just for their records, but for their contributions to community knowledge, their innovative techniques, and their embodiment of speedrunning values like dedication, humility, and willingness to share knowledge with others. Record-keeping systems developed by early speedrunning communities established standards for verification, categorization, and historical preservation that would serve the community for decades. These systems required careful documentation, community verification, and ongoing maintenance by dedicated volunteers who understood the importance of preserving speedrunning history for future generations. The psychological aspects of speedrunning attracted individuals who found satisfaction in incremental improvement, mathematical optimization, and the pursuit of perfection within clearly defined parameters. The practice appealed to players who enjoyed the meditative aspects of repetitive practice, the intellectual challenges of route optimization, and the social connections formed around shared appreciation for technical excellence. Educational content creation became a central activity within speedrunning communities as experienced runners recognized the importance of preserving and transmitting knowledge to newcomers. Tutorial creation was viewed as a community service and a way to ensure the continued growth and development of speedrunning culture. These educational efforts reflected the community's commitment to inclusivity and knowledge sharing. By 2010, speedrunning had established itself as a legitimate gaming subculture with its own traditions, standards, and cultural values. The foundations laid during this formative period would support the explosive growth and mainstream recognition that speedrunning would achieve during the following decade, while the collaborative and educational ethos established during these early years would remain central to speedrunning culture throughout its existence. The intellectual foundation of speedrunning rested upon a sophisticated understanding of games as mathematical systems that could be analyzed, optimized, and perfected through rigorous analytical thinking and precise execution. The speedrunning community developed what essentially amounted to an applied mathematics discipline, complete with formal methodologies, peer review processes, and theoretical frameworks that guided their pursuit of optimal performance within digital environments. The concept of routing in speedrunning represented one of the most sophisticated forms of applied mathematics to emerge from gaming culture. Speedrunners approached games as complex optimization problems where they needed to find the shortest path through multidimensional possibility spaces that included not just physical navigation, but resource management, time allocation, and risk assessment. A typical routing document for a major game resembled an academic paper, complete with mathematical proofs, probability calculations, and detailed analysis of trade-offs between different strategic approaches. Frame data analysis became the cornerstone of speedrunning optimization, reflecting the community's recognition that games operated according to precise mathematical timing that could be understood and exploited. Speedrunners learned to think in terms of individual frames of game logic, understanding that most games operated at 60 frames per second, and that optimal execution often required timing accurate to individual frames. This level of precision demanded mathematical thinking that translated abstract timing concepts into concrete human performance requirements. The development of probability calculations in speedrunning demonstrated the community's sophisticated approach to managing randomness within optimization strategies. Many games contained random number generation systems that affected enemy behavior, item drops, or environmental events. Speedrunners learned to calculate the probability distributions of different random outcomes and develop contingency plans that could maintain optimal routing, regardless of which random events occurred during a particular run attempt. Risk-reward analysis in speedrunning required complex mathematical modeling that balanced the potential time savings of difficult techniques against the probability of execution failure and the time cost of mistakes. Speedrunners developed frameworks for evaluating whether attempting a difficult trick that might save 3 seconds was worth the risk if failure would cost 30 seconds. These calculations required understanding not just the mathematical probabilities, but also honest assessment of individual skill levels and execution consistency. Resource management. Optimization in speedrunning games often required solving complex mathematical problems that resembled operations research or logistics optimization challenges. Runners needed to calculate optimal inventory management, determine efficient upgrade paths for character abilities, and optimize the allocation of limited resources across the duration of entire runs. These calculations often required advanced mathematical techniques and computer modeling to achieve truly optimal solutions. Input optimization represented perhaps the most abstract mathematical challenge in speedrunning, requiring runners to understand the precise timing and sequencing requirements for complex controller inputs. Frame-perfect execution meant that runners needed to perform input sequences with timing accurate to approximately 16.67 milliseconds, requiring them to develop almost superhuman precision and consistency. The mathematics of input optimization involved understanding controller polling rates, input buffering systems, and the relationship between human reaction times and game system timing. The concept of theory time in speedrunning represented the mathematical ideal of perfect execution, the theoretical minimum time required to complete a game if every input were executed perfectly and every random outcome were optimal. Calculating theory time required comprehensive understanding of game mechanics, mathematical optimization of all routing decisions, and precise measurement of minimum time requirements for individual actions. While theory time was typically impossible to achieve in practice, it provided a mathematical target that guided optimization efforts. Tool-assisted speedrunning emerged as a parallel mathematical discipline that used computer assistance to explore the theoretical limits of optimization within game systems. Tool-assisted speedruns served as mathematical proofs of concept, demonstrating what was theoretically possible with perfect execution and optimal decision-making. These runs often revealed optimization opportunities that human runners could then attempt to incorporate into their unassisted performances, creating a feedback loop between theoretical optimization and practical execution. Statistical analysis became increasingly important to speedrunning communities as runners accumulated large datasets of attempt times, success rates for specific techniques, and performance trends over time. Speedrunners used statistical analysis to identify their most common mistakes, measure improvement over time, and make evidence-based decisions about which techniques to practice and which strategies to prioritize. The mathematics of glitch analysis required speedrunners to understand game programming concepts and memory management systems well enough to predict and exploit unintended behavior. Runners who specialized in glitch discovery often developed programming knowledge that enabled them to understand why particular glitches occurred and predict where similar exploits might be found. This intersection of mathematical thinking and programming knowledge created some of the most innovative and technically sophisticated aspects of speedrunning culture. Routing software development reflected the community's commitment to applying computational tools to optimization challenges. Speedrunners created sophisticated programs that could model different routing options, calculate optimal resource allocation strategies, and analyze the mathematical trade-offs between different approaches. These tools often incorporated advanced algorithms and optimization techniques borrowed from computer science and operations research. The verification mathematics of speedrunning required developing statistical and analytical methods for detecting illegitimate runs while minimizing false positives. The community developed sophisticated techniques for analyzing video evidence, detecting splicing or tampering, and verifying the authenticity of claimed achievements. These verification methods required understanding video compression, statistical analysis of performance patterns, and careful examination of technical evidence. Collaborative optimization within speedrunning communities created distributed problem-solving networks that could tackle mathematical challenges too complex for individual analysis. Community members would work together on routing problems, sharing calculations and building upon each other's mathematical insights to achieve optimization breakthroughs that no individual runner could have discovered alone. The mathematical education that occurred within speedrunning communities often exceeded what many players had received in formal educational settings. Runners developed practical skills in probability, statistics, optimization theory, and applied mathematics through their pursuit of speedrunning improvement. The community's collaborative learning environment and focus on practical application created highly effective mathematical education that served runners well beyond their gaming activities. Performance analysis mathematics enabled speedrunners to identify patterns in their execution, track improvement over time, and make data-driven decisions about practice priorities. Runners learned to analyze their performance data scientifically, identifying statistical trends and using mathematical models to predict the effectiveness of different training approaches. The mathematical legacy of speedrunning optimization represents one of the most sophisticated applications of mathematics to emerge from gaming culture, demonstrating how communities of dedicated practitioners could develop advanced analytical capabilities in pursuit of perfect execution within clearly defined parameters. The history of speedrunning is inseparable from the remarkable individuals whose dedication, innovation, and achievements established the cultural landmarks that defined the community's identity and aspirations. These legendary figures, while each unique in their approaches and specializations, shared common traits of exceptional dedication, intellectual curiosity, and generous sharing of knowledge that embodied the best qualities of speedrunning culture. Their stories illuminate not just individual achievement, but the broader cultural values and practices that made speedrunning such a distinctive and admirable community. The early pioneers of speedrunning established many of the foundational principles and practices that would guide the community for decades. These individuals often began as exceptional players of particular games who gradually discovered that their mastery opened possibilities for entirely new forms of challenge and achievement. Their transition from casual excellence to systematic optimization represented the intellectual leap that created speedrunning as a distinct practice, transforming games from entertainment products into platforms for mathematical and physical performance art. Mythical figures in speedrunning lore often embody particular virtues or achievements that capture the community's imagination and establish aspirational standards for future generations. Stories of runners who achieved seemingly impossible times, discovered game-changing techniques, or demonstrated extraordinary dedication under challenging circumstances became part of speedrunning folklore, passed down through community discourse and serving as inspiration for countless other runners. The technical innovators within speedrunning communities were often individuals who combined exceptional gaming skill with deep analytical thinking and sometimes programming knowledge. These runners discovered new techniques, optimized routing strategies, and identified previously unknown glitches or exploits that revolutionized their chosen games. Their contributions went beyond individual achievement to expand the possibilities available to entire communities of runners. International speedrunning legends often served as bridges between different regional communities, sharing techniques and approaches across cultural and linguistic boundaries. These figures demonstrated that optimization principles and human excellence transcended cultural differences, while their diverse approaches to similar challenges enriched the global understanding of speedrunning possibilities. Community builders within speedrunning culture were often as influential as record holders, creating the infrastructure and social connections that enabled communities to thrive. These individuals organized events, maintained record-keeping systems, created educational content, and fostered the inclusive collaborative culture that made speedrunning communities welcoming to newcomers while maintaining high standards for achievement and verification. The psychological profiles of legendary speedrunners often revealed individuals who found deep satisfaction in incremental improvement, systematic practice, and the pursuit of perfection within clearly defined parameters. Many speedrunning legends were drawn to the meditative aspects of repetitive practice, the intellectual challenges of optimization, and the social connections formed around shared appreciation for technical excellence. Charitable contributions by speedrunning legends helped establish the community's reputation for positive social impact and demonstrated how dedication to seemingly abstract challenges could be channeled toward meaningful real-world benefits. Many legendary figures became involved in charity speedrunning events, using their skills and community standing to raise funds for worthy causes, while showcasing speedrunning culture to broader audiences. The mentorship traditions established by speedrunning legends created lasting educational legacies that extended far beyond their individual achievements. Many legendary figures invested substantial time and energy in teaching newcomers, creating educational content, and ensuring that their knowledge and techniques will be preserved and transmitted to future generations of runners. Technical analysis contributions by legendary speedrunners often produced documentation and theoretical frameworks that served entire communities for years or decades. Their routing guides, technique tutorials, and analytical insights became foundational texts that shaped how generations of runners approached particular games and optimization challenges. Innovation cycles within speedrunning communities often centered around legendary figures whose breakthrough achievements inspired waves of community-wide improvement and optimization. When a legendary runner achieved a significant time improvement or discovered a new technique, their achievement would often catalyze community-wide efforts to understand, replicate, and build upon their innovations. The verification challenges posed by legendary achievements required speedrunning communities to develop sophisticated methods for authenticating extraordinary claims while maintaining trust and respect for individual runners. The community's approaches to verification reflected their commitment to maintaining integrity while presuming good faith and celebrating genuine achievement. Cultural representation by speedrunning legends helped establish speedrunning's reputation within broader gaming culture and demonstrated the intellectual depth and positive social values that characterized the community. These figures often served as ambassadors for speedrunning culture, representing the community's values and achievements to outside observers. The performance psychology of legendary speedrunners often revealed individuals who had mastered not just the technical aspects of their chosen games, but also the mental disciplines required for consistent high-level performance under pressure. Their approaches to managing stress, maintaining focus, and recovering from mistakes provided models for other runners seeking to improve their own psychological game. Educational legacies created by speedrunning legends often extended beyond their specific games or techniques to encompass broader principles of learning, practice, and improvement that served community members in various aspects of their lives. The systematic approaches to skill development and problem-solving demonstrated by legendary figures provided valuable life lessons about dedication, analytical thinking, and collaborative learning. The transition experiences of legendary speedrunners as games evolved and speedrunning culture changed provided insights into adaptation, resilience, and the ability to find meaning and purpose even as external circumstances shifted. Many legendary figures successfully transitioned to new roles within evolving gaming cultures while maintaining connections to speedrunning communities and values. Preservation efforts by and for speedrunning legends reflect the community's recognition that individual achievements and contributions deserve documentation and celebration. The careful maintenance of records, videos, and historical documentation ensures that the contributions of legendary figures remain accessible to future generations who may study speedrunning culture as a historical phenomenon. The collective impact of speedrunning legends created a cultural legacy that extended far beyond individual achievement to establish speedrunning as a legitimate form of human performance, art that demonstrated remarkable possibilities for dedication, optimization, and community building within digital environments. The discovery and systematic exploitation of unintended game behaviors represented one of the most intellectually fascinating aspects of speedrunning culture, transforming accidental programming quirks into precisely understood mathematical phenomena that could be reliably reproduced and strategically employed. The speedrunning community's approach to glitch analysis and exploitation demonstrated remarkable reverse engineering capabilities and created a folk science tradition that often exceeded professional game development knowledge in depth and sophistication. Glitch discovery within speedrunning communities typically began with accidental observations during normal gameplay, but evolved into systematic exploration guided by understanding of programming principles and game engine architectures. Experienced glitch hunters developed intuitions about where unusual behaviors might occur based on their understanding of memory management, collision detection systems, and state machine logic. This systematic approach to exploration often revealed exploits that had remained hidden from both casual players and professional testers for years or decades after a game's release. The categorization systems developed by speedrunning communities for different types of glitches reflected sophisticated understanding of programming concepts and game engine architectures. Speedrunners distinguished between memory corruption exploits, physics engine abuse, sequence breaks, arbitrary code execution, and dozens of other technical categories based on the underlying programming mechanisms that enabled each type of behavior. This taxonomic approach enabled targeted exploration and helped runners predict where similar exploits might be found in other games or situations. Memory manipulation techniques represented some of the most technically sophisticated glitch exploits developed by speedrunning communities. Advanced practitioners learned to understand game memory layouts well enough to predict how specific actions might corrupt or modify memory values in useful ways. These techniques often required programming-level knowledge and precise execution timing that pushed the boundaries of what could be achieved through manual controller input. Physics engine exploitation became a specialized discipline within speedrunning communities as runners discovered that realistic physics simulations often contained edge cases and numerical precision issues that could be exploited for movement advantages. Techniques like backwards long jumping in Super Mario 64 or bunny hopping in source engine games required understanding mathematical principles behind physics calculations and developing the execution skills necessary to exploit these systems consistently. Sequence breaking represented a particularly intellectually satisfying form of speedrunning optimization that involved circumventing intended game progression through creative problem-solving and spatial reasoning. Runners who specialized in sequence breaking often developed exceptional spatial intelligence and creative thinking skills as they found ways to access areas or abilities earlier than intended by game designers. The verification challenges posed by glitch-based speedruns required communities to develop sophisticated technical analysis capabilities that could distinguish between legitimate exploits and external cheating tools. Verification experts learned to recognize the subtle visual and behavioral signatures of different glitch types while identifying potential signs of tool assistance or video manipulation. Tool-assisted research played a crucial role in glitch discovery and optimization, enabling runners to explore theoretical possibilities with frame-perfect precision and unlimited attempt counts. Tool-assisted speedrunning often served as a research methodology for discovering new glitches and optimizing existing techniques before attempting to replicate them in unassisted runs. Cross-game glitch analysis revealed that similar programming patterns often produce similar exploits across different games built with shared engines or development frameworks. Speedrunning communities developed expertise in recognizing these patterns and systematically exploring new games for familiar types of exploitable behaviors. The mathematical modeling of glitch execution often required understanding probability distributions, input timing windows, and success rate optimization that resembled engineering reliability analysis. Runners needed to balance the potential time savings of difficult glitches against execution risks and develop strategies for maximizing consistency while minimizing time loss from failed attempts. Documentation standards for glitch techniques reflected the community's commitment to preserving and sharing technical knowledge. Detailed written guides, frame-by-frame video analysis, and precise input timing specifications enabled other runners to learn and replicate complex techniques while building upon existing knowledge to develop improvements and variations. The ethical frameworks developed by speedrunning communities for evaluating glitch acceptability demonstrated sophisticated thinking about fairness, authenticity, and competitive integrity. Communities established category systems that could accommodate different philosophical approaches to glitch usage while maintaining clear standards for each competitive context. Educational content creation around glitch techniques often produced some of the most technically sophisticated gaming education available anywhere. Speedrunning tutorials that explained complex glitches often required understanding programming concepts, mathematical principles, and execution techniques at levels that exceeded professional game development training. Programming knowledge acquisition by speedrunning community members often occurred through informal learning, motivated by curiosity about glitch mechanisms. Many speedrunners developed substantial programming expertise through their interest in understanding and exploiting game systems, creating an unusual educational pathway that combined practical skills with theoretical knowledge. The social dynamics around glitch discovery reflected speedrunning culture's collaborative values, with discoverers typically sharing their findings freely and receiving community recognition for their contributions. This open-source approach to knowledge sharing accelerated the pace of discovery and optimization while maintaining community cohesion around shared technical advancement. Version control challenges in glitch-based speedrunning required careful attention to game updates and patches that might modify or eliminate exploitable behaviors. Communities developed sophisticated practices for documenting version differences and maintaining competitive categories that could accommodate different software versions. Historical preservation of glitch knowledge became important as games evolved and exploits were patched out of newer versions. The speedrunning community's documentation efforts ensured that knowledge about complex techniques would be preserved even if the techniques themselves became impossible to execute in current game versions. The intellectual legacy of speedrunning glitch analysis extended beyond gaming to demonstrate how dedicated communities could develop sophisticated technical expertise through collaborative exploration and knowledge sharing. The reverse engineering capabilities and systematic analysis methods developed by speedrunners provided models for technical education and community-based research that had applications far beyond gaming contexts. The technological infrastructure developed by and for speedrunning communities represented one of the most sophisticated grassroots technology development efforts to emerge from gaming culture, creating specialized tools and measurement systems that enabled precise documentation, analysis, and improvement of human performance within digital environments. These tools reflected the community's commitment to accuracy, fairness, and continuous improvement while maintaining the essential human element that distinguished speedrunning from automated optimization. Timing software development within speedrunning communities began as simple stopwatch replacements, but evolved into sophisticated programs that could automatically detect game states, split timing across route segments, and provide detailed statistical analysis of performance patterns. The most advanced timing software could integrate with capture cards to detect visual cues that indicated level transitions or completion events, enabling automatic timing that eliminated human error while maintaining verifiable accuracy. Video recording and analysis tools became essential infrastructure for speedrunning verification in education, requiring solutions that could capture high-quality video while minimizing performance impact on games that demanded precise timing and consistent frame rates. The community developed standards for recording quality, compression settings, and documentation requirements that balance file size constraints with verification needs and educational value. Frame-by-frame analysis software enabled speedrunners to examine their performances with scientific precision, measuring input timing accuracy, identifying execution errors, and comparing different approaches to specific techniques or route segments. These analysis tools often included features for overlaying input displays, measuring frame-perfect timing windows, and generating statistical reports on execution consistency. Input display technology became crucial for verification and educational purposes, providing visual representations of controller inputs that could prove the legitimacy of difficult techniques while helping other runners understand precise timing requirements. Advanced input display systems could show not just button presses but analog stick positions, timing accuracy, and input buffering states that affected game behavior. Routing software represented some of the most mathematically sophisticated tools developed by speedrunning communities, enabling runners to model different strategic approaches, calculate optimal resource allocation, and analyze trade-offs between competing route options. The most advanced routing tools incorporated probability calculations for random events and could generate contingency plans for different scenarios that might occur during actual runs. Capture card technology and streaming infrastructure enabled speedrunning communities to share live performances and create archived libraries of runs that served both competitive and educational purposes. The technical requirements for speedrunning streaming often exceeded those of casual gaming content, demanding low-latency capture, high frame rate recording, and reliable upload systems that could handle lengthy broadcasts. Verification tools developed by speedrunning communities enabled moderators to detect various forms of cheating while minimizing false positives that might wrongly discredit legitimate achievements. These tools could analyze video compression artifacts, detect splicing indicators, identify tool assistance signatures, and perform statistical analysis of performance patterns that might indicate artificial enhancement. Emulation technology played a complex role in speedrunning communities, providing access to older games while raising questions about performance accuracy and competitive equity. Communities developed sophisticated standards for acceptable emulation settings, input lag measurements, and verification requirements that could maintain competitive integrity across different hardware platforms. Practice tools created specifically for speedrunning enabled targeted skill development and consistency improvement through features like save states, input playback, and isolated technique practice. These tools were typically used for learning and improvement rather than official runs, helping runners develop the muscle memory and timing precision required for consistent high-level performance. Statistical analysis software enabled speedrunners to track their improvement over time, identify patterns in their performance, and make data-driven decisions about practice priorities and strategic approaches. Advanced statistical tools could analyze success rates for specific techniques, measure consistency trends, and predict optimal approaches based on individual runner capabilities. Community-maintained databases provided centralized repositories for records, runner profiles, and historical documentation that served as official archives for speedrunning achievements. These systems required sophisticated data management, verification workflows, and search capabilities that could serve global communities while maintaining accuracy and accessibility. Hardware standardization efforts within speedrunning communities addressed the complex challenges of ensuring fair competition across different controller types, display technologies, and console versions. Communities developed guidelines for acceptable hardware modifications, input lag measurements, and performance differences that might affect competitive equity. Network infrastructure for speedrunning communities required platforms that could support live streaming, video archives, real-time chat, and community coordination while handling the substantial bandwidth and storage requirements associated with high-quality video content. The most successful community platforms often combine gaming-specific features with general social networking capabilities. Quality assurance processes for speedrunning tools reflected the community's commitment to accuracy and reliability in measurement and verification systems. Tool developers often implemented peer review processes, open-source development practices, and extensive testing protocols that ensured their software would perform reliably under the demanding conditions of competitive speedrunning. Documentation systems for speedrunning tools and techniques created comprehensive knowledge bases that could preserve community expertise and make complex technical information accessible to newcomers. The most effective documentation combined written explanations, video demonstrations, and interactive tutorials that could accommodate different learning styles and skill levels. Integration challenges between different speedrunning tools require community-wide coordination and standardization efforts that could enable seamless workflows while preserving compatibility across different software ecosystems. The most successful integration efforts often involved collaborative development between different tool creators and extensive community testing. Open-source development practices within speedrunning tool creation reflected the community's collaborative values and commitment to knowledge sharing. Many essential speedrunning tools were developed and maintained as community projects, with source code freely available and development guided by user feedback and community needs. The technological legacy of speedrunning tool development extended beyond gaming to demonstrate how dedicated communities could create sophisticated technical solutions through collaborative development and shared expertise. The tools and practices developed by speedrunning communities provided models for precision measurement, performance analysis, and community-driven technology development that had applications across various domains requiring accurate human performance measurement and improvement. The evolution of organized speedrunning events, particularly the Games Done Quick Marathon series, represented the transformation of a niche community practice into a celebrated cultural phenomenon that demonstrated speedrunning's potential for entertainment, education, and positive social impact. These events became annual celebrations that brought together the global speedrunning community while introducing broader audiences to the technical artistry and collaborative values that define speedrunning culture. The inception of marathon speedrunning events emerged from the community's desire to celebrate their shared passion while demonstrating the entertainment value and positive social potential of speedrunning culture. Early events were typically small, informal gatherings organized by community members who wanted to showcase different games and techniques while raising funds for charitable causes. These grassroots beginnings reflected speedrunning culture's emphasis on community building and social responsibility. The production evolution of Games Done Quick events demonstrated remarkable growth in technical sophistication and professional presentation while maintaining the informal, community-driven atmosphere that made these events distinctive. As the events gained popularity and charitable impact, they developed increasingly sophisticated streaming production, professional commentary, and multimedia presentations that could effectively communicate speedrunning's appeal to diverse audiences. Commentary culture within speedrunning marathons became an art form that balanced technical education with entertainment value, requiring commentators to explain complex techniques and strategies in accessible language while maintaining engaging dialogue throughout potentially lengthy runs. The best speedrunning commentary combined deep technical knowledge with teaching skills and entertainment sensibility that could serve both speedrunning enthusiasts and newcomers to the community. Charitable fundraising became central to the identity and impact of speedrunning marathons, demonstrating how dedication to abstract optimization challenges could be channeled toward meaningful real-world benefits. The success of Games Done Quick events in raising millions of dollars for various charities helped establish speedrunning's reputation as a positive cultural force while providing concrete demonstration of the community's values and social impact. Game selection processes for marathon events required careful curation that could showcase the diversity of speedrunning while maintaining appropriate pacing and entertainment value for extended broadcasts. Event organizers developed sophisticated approaches to balancing popular games with lesser-known titles, technical showcases with entertaining performances, and educational content with pure entertainment. Community participation in marathon events extended far beyond the featured runners to include volunteers, commentators, audience members, and online viewers who contributed to the collaborative atmosphere that made these events successful. The inclusive nature of marathon events reflected speedrunning culture's commitment to community building and shared celebration of technical achievement. Technical production challenges for speedrunning marathons required solutions that could handle complex audio-visual requirements while maintaining the reliability necessary for lengthy live broadcasts. Event organizers developed expertise in streaming technology, multi-camera production, and real-time content management that often exceeded the capabilities of much larger entertainment productions. International participation in speedrunning marathons demonstrated the global nature of the community while creating opportunities for cross-cultural exchange and collaboration. Events began incorporating runners from different countries and regions, showcasing diverse approaches to speedrunning while building international connections within the global community. Educational value provided by marathon events often introduced viewers to new games, techniques, and community members while demonstrating the intellectual depth and cultural richness of speedrunning. Many viewers discovered new interests through marathon events, leading them to explore speedrunning themselves or develop deeper appreciation for the technical and artistic aspects of the practice. Historical documentation through marathon events created comprehensive archives of speedrunning culture that preserved community knowledge and achievements for future study. The recorded broadcasts from major marathons became important cultural documents that captured not just individual performances, but the broader social dynamics and cultural values of speedrunning communities. Innovation showcases within marathon events provided platforms for demonstrating new techniques, recently discovered glitches, or experimental approaches that pushed the boundaries of what was possible within particular games. These showcases often served as community-wide learning opportunities while celebrating the ongoing innovation and discovery that kept speedrunning culture vibrant. Audience engagement strategies developed for speedrunning marathons created interactive experiences that could involve viewers in the excitement and community spirit of the events. Features like donation incentives, game choice voting, and real-time chat interaction enabled remote audiences to participate meaningfully in the celebration while contributing to charitable causes. Legacy preservation efforts associated with marathon events ensured that the cultural and educational value of these celebrations would remain accessible to future generations. Organizers developed sophisticated archival systems and documentation practices that could preserve not just the video content, but the cultural context and community significance of these important cultural events. Cultural impact assessment of speedrunning marathons revealed their influence on broader gaming culture, charitable fundraising practices, and live streaming entertainment. These events demonstrated how niche communities could create culturally significant entertainment that served both internal community building and external education and advocacy purposes. Professional development opportunities created by marathon events enable community members to develop skills in event organization, live production, commentary, and community management that often translated into career opportunities within and beyond gaming. Many community members found that their volunteer work with marathon events provided valuable experience and connections. Sponsorship and partnership development for marathon events required balancing commercial support with community values and charitable purposes. Successful events developed approaches to corporate partnership that could provide necessary resources while maintaining the authentic, community-driven character that made speedrunning marathons distinctive. The social media integration and online community building associated with marathon events extended their impact far beyond the actual broadcast periods, creating year-round engagement and community building that sustained interest and participation between events. These online communities often became important spaces for ongoing education, social connection, and collaborative planning. The measurement of success for speedrunning marathons encompassed not just charitable fundraising totals, but community building, cultural impact, educational value, and the preservation and celebration of speedrunning culture. The holistic approach to evaluating event success reflected the community's recognition that these celebrations served multiple important purposes beyond simple entertainment or fundraising. The psychological dimensions of speedrunning revealed fascinating insights into human motivation, learning, and the pursuit of excellence within clearly defined parameters. Speedrunners demonstrated remarkable dedication to incremental improvement and perfectionist achievement that illuminated broader questions about what drives individuals to pursue mastery in abstract domains and how communities can support sustained effort toward challenging goals. The motivational psychology underlying speedrunning often centered around intrinsic satisfaction derived from optimization, improvement, and mastery rather than external rewards or recognition. Many speedrunners describe their practice as meditative or flow-inducing, finding deep satisfaction in the repetitive practice and incremental progress that characterized skill development. This intrinsic motivation helps sustain the substantial time investment required for serious speedrunning achievement. Perfectionist tendencies among speedrunners typically manifested as positive perfectionism, focused on personal improvement and systematic problem-solving, rather than dysfunctional perfectionism, characterized by fear of failure or excessive self-criticism. The speedrunning community's emphasis on learning from mistakes and celebrating incremental progress created cultural contexts that channel perfectionist tendencies toward productive outcomes. The learning psychology exhibited by successful speedrunners demonstrated sophisticated approaches to skill acquisition that combined deliberate practice principles with systematic analysis and continuous feedback integration. Speedrunners often developed highly effective personal learning systems that maximized skill development efficiency while maintaining motivation through long periods of intensive practice. Goal-setting behaviors within speedrunning communities reflected advanced understanding of effective motivation and achievement psychology. Runners typically established hierarchical goal systems with immediate, intermediate, and long-term objectives that provide a continuous sense of progress while building toward ambitious ultimate achievements. The time-based nature of speedrunning provided clear, measurable targets that facilitated effective goal setting. Stress management and performance psychology became crucial skills for speedrunners who needed to execute complex techniques consistently under pressure, particularly during recorded attempts or live performances. Many runners developed sophisticated approaches to managing performance anxiety, maintaining focus during lengthy runs, and recovering from mistakes without compromising subsequent execution. The role of failure and mistake recovery in speedrunning psychology demonstrated the community's healthy approach to setbacks and learning from errors. Speedrunners typically viewed failed attempts as learning opportunities that provided valuable information about their skill development needs and execution consistency. This positive relationship with failure contributed to resilience and sustained motivation. Social motivation within speedrunning communities provided important support for individual achievement while maintaining collaborative rather than destructive competitive dynamics. Many runners described the community support and shared celebration of achievements as crucial factors in their continued participation and improvement. The culture of knowledge sharing and mutual assistance created positive social reinforcement for continued effort. Flow state psychology appeared frequently in speedrunner descriptions of optimal performance experiences, with many describing their best runs as characterized by effortless execution, complete focus, and loss of self-consciousness. Understanding flow states and the conditions that facilitated them became important for runners seeking to achieve consistent high-level performance. The cognitive psychology of route memorization and execution demonstrated remarkable human capacity for developing detailed procedural knowledge and executing complex behavioral sequences with exceptional precision. Speedrunners often developed memory techniques and practice methods that optimized their ability to internalize and execute lengthy, precise behavioral routines. Attention and concentration psychology played crucial roles in speedrunning performance, requiring runners to maintain focused attention throughout runs that might last several hours while continuously monitoring multiple information streams and making rapid decisions. Many runners developed attention training practices that enhanced their ability to sustain focus and manage cognitive load. The psychology of incremental improvement reflected speedrunning culture's emphasis on gradual progress and systematic development rather than dramatic breakthroughs. Runners learned to find satisfaction in small improvements and to maintain motivation through periods where progress might be measured in fractions of seconds, achieved over months of practice. Risk assessment and decision-making psychology in speedrunning required sophisticated evaluation of probability, potential outcomes, and individual skill levels. Runners needed to make real-time decisions about which techniques to attempt based on complex calculations that balance potential time savings against execution risks in their current performance state. Personal identity and self-concept formation within speedrunning communities demonstrated how specialized achievement communities could provide meaningful identity frameworks and self-efficacy development. Many runners described speedrunning as central to their personal identity and source of self-esteem, while the community provided social recognition and validation for their achievements. The psychology of obsessive behavior in speedrunning typically manifested as positive obsession that provided structure, meaning, and achievement rather than dysfunctional obsession that interfered with other life domains. The community's culture and the nature of speedrunning goals often channeled obsessive tendencies toward productive outcomes and personal development. Mindfulness and present moment awareness played important roles in speedrunning psychology, as optimal performance required complete attention to immediate execution without distraction from past mistakes or future concerns. Many runners developed mindfulness practices that enhanced their ability to maintain present moment focus during runs. The psychology of competition within speedrunning communities demonstrated healthy competitive dynamics that emphasized personal improvement and mutual support rather than destructive rivalry. The time-based nature of speedrunning competition and the community's collaborative values created competitive contexts that motivated improvement while maintaining positive social relationships. Burnout prevention and sustained motivation management became important considerations for serious speedrunners who needed to maintain intensive practice schedules while preserving enjoyment and avoiding psychological exhaustion. The community developed informal support systems and practices that helped runners maintain long-term engagement while managing the psychological demands of serious speedrunning pursuit. The therapeutic potential of speedrunning psychology appeared in many runners' descriptions of how their practice provided stress relief, structured challenge, and sense of accomplishment that contributed to their overall psychological well-being. The combination of clear goals, measurable progress, and community support created conditions that could serve important mental health functions for many participants. The intellectual discipline of speedrunning route development represented one of the most sophisticated forms of applied mathematics and strategic planning to emerge from gaming culture, requiring runners to solve complex optimization problems that balanced multiple competing objectives while accounting for human execution limitations and probabilistic outcomes. The routing process combined mathematical rigor with practical constraints in ways that resembled professional operations research and strategic planning. Pathfinding algorithms in speedrunning routing often required solutions to traveling salesman-type problems where runners needed to determine optimal sequences for completing required objectives while minimizing total time investment. These calculations became particularly complex in games with nonlinear progression, where multiple valid completion orders existed, and the optimal choice depended on precise timing calculations and resource availability considerations. Resource management optimization formed a central component of speedrunning route development, requiring mathematical modeling of inventory limitations, upgrade opportunities, and consumption rates that would maximize efficiency throughout entire runs. Runners needed to solve complex allocation problems that determine optimal spending patterns for limited resources, while accounting for uncertain future opportunities and random events that might affect resource availability. Probability calculations in routing addressed the mathematical challenges posed by random number generation systems that affected enemy behavior, item drops, environmental events, and other variable factors that could influence route effectiveness. Advanced routing incorporated probability trees that modeled different random outcomes and developed contingency strategies that could maintain near optimal performance regardless of which random events occurred. Time complexity analysis in speedrunning routing required mathematical frameworks that could evaluate the trade-offs between different strategic approaches based on their total time requirements, execution difficulty, and success probability. Runners developed sophisticated cost-benefit analysis methods that could account for both direct time costs and indirect costs associated with setup requirements, failure recovery, and execution consistency. Dynamic programming applications in speedrunning routing address problems where optimal strategies for later sections of runs depended on the state achieved in earlier sections. These calculations required mathematical techniques that could evaluate complex conditional strategies and determine optimal decision points based on multiple variable factors that evolved throughout run execution. Game theory applications appeared in speedrunning routing when games included competitive elements or situations where optimal strategies depended on predicting and responding to AI opponent behavior. Runners developed mathematical models of AI decision-making that could predict opponent responses and optimize their own strategies for maximum effectiveness against artificial opponents. Statistical optimization in routing development required mathematical analysis of large datasets that included timing measurements, success rates, and performance variables collected across many practice attempts and completed runs. Advanced routing used statistical techniques to identify optimal strategies based on empirical evidence rather than theoretical calculations alone. Multi-objective optimization challenges in speedrunning. Routing arose when different strategic approaches optimized for different metrics that might conflict with each other. Runners needed mathematical frameworks that could balance competing objectives like minimizing time while maximizing consistency, or optimizing for different skill levels and execution capabilities. Risk assessment mathematics in routing required sophisticated probability calculations that could evaluate the expected value of different strategic choices based on their potential time savings, execution difficulty, and failure consequences. These calculations helped runners make informed decisions about which techniques to incorporate into their routes based on their individual skill levels and risk tolerance. Sensitivity analysis in speedrunning routing examined how small changes in execution timing or random outcomes might affect overall route effectiveness, helping runners understand which aspects of their strategies were most critical for success and which provided the greatest opportunities for improvement. This analysis guided practice priorities and route refinement efforts. Contingency planning mathematics addressed the complex challenge of developing backup strategies that could handle various failure scenarios while minimizing time loss and maintaining route viability. Advanced routing included decision trees that specified optimal responses to different types of execution failures or unexpected random outcomes. Performance modeling in routing development used mathematical techniques to predict how theoretical route strategies would perform under real execution conditions, accounting for human limitations, consistency factors, and learning curves that affected practical implementation of theoretical optimizations. Optimization convergence analysis examined how route development progressed over time as communities discovered new techniques and accumulated knowledge about optimal strategies. Mathematical analysis of optimization trajectories helped predict how close current routes were to theoretical optimums and where future improvements were most likely to be discovered. Computational complexity considerations in routing development addressed the mathematical challenges of analyzing games with large possibility spaces, where exhaustive analysis was computationally infeasible. Runners developed heuristic methods and approximation techniques that could identify near-optimal solutions without requiring impossible computational resources. Meta-optimization in speedrunning routing involved optimizing the optimization process itself, developing mathematical frameworks that could efficiently explore route possibilities and identify promising areas for detailed analysis. These techniques helped communities systematically explore large route possibility spaces and coordinate collective optimization efforts. Verification mathematics in routing development ensured that claimed route optimizations were mathematically sound and practically achievable. Communities developed peer review processes and mathematical validation techniques that could identify errors in route calculations while maintaining confidence in optimization claims. Documentation mathematics in routing development required standardized methods for representing complex mathematical calculations and strategic decisions in forms that could be understood and verified by other community members. Advanced routing documentation often resembled academic papers with formal mathematical notation and rigorous logical structure. The educational value of speedrunning routing mathematics provided practical applications for advanced mathematical concepts that many participants might not have encountered in formal educational settings. The routing process offered hands-on experience with optimization theory, probability calculation, statistical analysis, and strategic planning that demonstrated the practical utility of mathematical thinking. Collaborative optimization within speedrunning communities created distributed problem-solving networks that could tackle routing challenges too complex for individual analysis. Mathematical coordination methods enabled communities to divide complex routing problems into manageable components while maintaining overall optimization coherence across collective efforts. As we reach the midpoint of our exploration of speedrunning culture, it becomes essential to pause and examine what many historians now recognize as the peak years of speedrunning influence and cultural significance. The period from roughly 2015 to 2025 represented speedrunning's greatest cultural prominence, when the practice achieved mainstream recognition while maintaining its core values and continuing to push the boundaries of human performance within digital environments. The mainstream recognition achieved during speedrunning's peak years reflected broader cultural shifts toward appreciating technical skill, mathematical thinking, and collaborative achievement within digital contexts. Gaming culture itself was gaining legitimacy as a form of entertainment and artistic expression, creating cultural conditions where speedrunning sophisticated technical practices and positive community values could be recognized and celebrated by audiences beyond the gaming community. The quantitative achievements of speedrunning during its peak years were remarkable in their scope and precision. World records that had seemed unbreakable were systematically optimized through community collaboration and individual dedication. Games that had been thoroughly explored revealed new possibilities through mathematical analysis and innovative technique development. The accumulated knowledge and documentation produced during this period created comprehensive archives of human achievement within digital environments. The technological sophistication achieved by speedrunning communities during their peak years exceeded that of many professional gaming organizations and academic research groups. Community-developed tools for timing, analysis, verification, and education represented cutting-edge applications of technology to human performance measurement and improvement. The open-source development culture within speedrunning communities accelerated innovation, while ensuring that technical advances benefited entire communities rather than individual competitors. The educational impact of speedrunning during its peak years extended far beyond gaming into mathematics, education, computer science learning, and systematic thinking development. Educational institutions began recognizing speedrunning as a legitimate context for learning about optimization, probability, statistical analysis, and collaborative problem solving. The community's emphasis on documentation and knowledge sharing created educational resources that often exceeded formal educational materials in clarity and practical application. The charitable achievements of speedrunning communities during their peak years demonstrated the potential for specialized hobby communities to create meaningful social impact while pursuing their primary interests. The success of Games Done Quick events and similar initiatives proved that dedication to abstract technical challenges could be channeled toward concrete social benefits, helping establish speedrunning's reputation as a positive cultural force. The international scope of speedrunning culture during its peak years created truly global communities that transcended linguistic, cultural, and economic barriers through shared appreciation for technical excellence and collaborative improvement. The development of cross-cultural communication standards and inclusive community practices within speedrunning provided models for international cooperation that had applications beyond gaming contexts. The artistic recognition achieved by speedrunning during its peak years reflected growing cultural appreciation for digital performance, art, and technical mastery within virtual environments. Art institutions, cultural critics, and academic researchers began treating speedrunning as a legitimate form of human creative expression that combined athletic achievement with mathematical optimization and aesthetic performance. The psychological insights generated by speedrunning research during its peak years contributed to broader understanding of human motivation, learning, and performance optimization. Studies of speedrunning communities provided valuable data about intrinsic motivation, collaborative learning, positive perfectionism, and the psychological conditions that supported sustained high-level achievement in challenging domains. The technical innovations pioneered by speedrunning communities during their peak years influenced broader gaming culture and technology development. Techniques for performance measurement, video analysis, community coordination, and knowledge preservation developed by speedrunners found applications in professional gaming, educational technology, and human performance research across various fields. The preservation efforts initiated during speedrunning's peak years reflected community recognition that their cultural achievements deserve documentation and protection for future study. Comprehensive archival projects preserve not just individual records and achievements, but the broader cultural context, community dynamics, and evolutionary development that characterize speedrunning as a cultural phenomenon. However, the peak years also revealed emerging challenges that would eventually contribute to speedrunning's transformation and decline. Market saturation in popular games led to increasingly marginal improvements that required extraordinary time investment for diminishing returns. The technical barriers to entry for competitive speedrunning continued to increase as communities accumulated knowledge and established increasingly sophisticated standards for achievement and verification. The social dynamics within speedrunning communities during their peak years sometimes struggled with the tensions between inclusive community building and competitive achievement standards. As speedrunning gained mainstream attention, communities needed to balance their traditional collaborative values with the pressures and opportunities associated with increased visibility and commercial interest. The technological dependencies that enabled speedrunning's sophisticated practices during its peak years also created vulnerabilities that would eventually contribute to the practice's obsolescence. The community's reliance on static game code, predictable system behaviors, and consistent hardware platforms created fundamental dependencies that would be eliminated by subsequent technological developments. The cultural legacy established during speedrunning's peak years provided foundations that would influence gaming culture, educational practices, and community organization long after traditional speedrunning became impossible. The values, practices, and achievements of speedrunning communities during their peak years created lasting contributions to digital culture that exceeded the importance of any individual records or achievements. The documentation and analysis of speedrunning culture during its peak years created comprehensive cultural records that serve as primary sources for understanding one of the most remarkable hobby communities ever to emerge from digital culture. These archives provide insights into human creativity, collaborative achievement, and community building that remain relevant for understanding how specialized communities can create meaningful cultural value. The transition from peak achievement to gradual decline during the later 2020s occurred gradually enough that many community members initially interpreted technological changes as temporary challenges, rather than fundamental transformations that would ultimately make traditional speedrunning impossible. The community's resilience and adaptability during this transition period demonstrated the strength of the cultural foundations established during the peak years. As we continue our exploration of speedrunning's eventual transformation and legacy, the achievements and cultural contributions of the peak years provide essential context for understanding both what was lost when traditional speedrunning became impossible and what enduring values and practices continue to influence gaming culture and digital communities in the AI-enhanced gaming environment of 2035. The period from 2025 to 2030 marked the beginning of the most profound technological transformation in gaming history, as artificial intelligence systems began to be integrated into game design in ways that would fundamentally alter the relationship between players and virtual environments. For speedrunning communities, these changes represented an existential challenge to the basic assumptions that had made their practice possible, initiating a gradual but irreversible transition away from the static, predictable game worlds that had enabled 3 decades of optimization culture. The early manifestations of adaptive gaming technology were subtle enough that many speedrunners initially dismissed them as minor complications rather than fundamental threats to their practice. Games began incorporating machine learning systems that could adjust difficulty levels based on player performance, modify enemy behavior patterns to maintain challenge, and personalize content delivery to enhance individual engagement. These systems were often marketed as quality-of-life improvements that would make games more accessible and enjoyable for casual players. Anti-cheat evolution during this period represented one of the first direct challenges to traditional speedrunning practices. AI-powered anti-cheat systems became sophisticated enough to detect and prevent many of the glitches and exploits that had been central to speedrunning culture. These systems could identify unusual player behavior patterns, detect sequence-breaking attempts, and automatically patch exploits in real time. While these technologies served legitimate purposes in competitive multiplayer gaming, they also eliminated many of the techniques that had defined speedrunning for decades. Dynamic content generation began appearing in games during this period, with AI systems creating procedurally generated levels, randomly distributed items, and variable quest objectives that ensured no 2 playthroughs would be identical. Game developers promoted these features as increasing replay value and creating more diverse player experiences. However, the elimination of static content made traditional speedrunning route memorization impossible and destroyed the consistency that had enabled comparative timing and optimization. Personalization algorithms started influencing game experiences in ways that prioritized individual player engagement over universal consistency. Games began adapting their pacing, challenge levels, and content presentation based on psychological profiles derived from player behavior analysis. While these systems created more engaging experiences for casual players, they eliminated the shared reference points that had enabled speedrunning communities to compare achievements and collaborate on optimization strategies. Real-time balancing systems emerged that could modify game mechanics on the fly to maintain optimal player engagement and prevent exploitation of mechanical advantages. These systems monitored player performance and automatically adjusted physics parameters, ability cooldowns, and resource availability to maintain intended difficulty curves. The constant evolution of game mechanics made consistent strategy development impossible and eliminated the stable systems that speedrunners had spent decades mastering. A driven narrative adaptation became increasingly common during this period, with games using machine learning to modify story presentations, character interactions, and quest structures based on player choices and engagement patterns. These adaptive narratives created more personalized and emotionally resonant experiences for individual players, while making consistent route planning impossible for speedrunners who relied on predictable story progression. Cloud-based processing integration enabled games to offload computational tasks to remote servers, where AI systems could process player behavior and adjust game experiences in real time. This distributed computing model made it impossible for players to analyze or predict game behavior through local system analysis, eliminating many of the reverse engineering approaches that had enabled glitch discovery and optimization in traditional speedrunning. Version control complications arose as games began receiving continuous updates through cloud-based distribution systems rather than discrete patches. The constant evolution of game code made it impossible to establish stable version standards for competitive comparison, while the automated nature of these updates meant that speedrunning communities could no longer control which game versions they used for competitive purposes. Community adaptation attempts during this period demonstrated the speedrunning community's resilience and creativity in responding to technological challenges. Some communities established private servers or offline versions of games to preserve static environments for traditional speedrunning. Others attempted to develop new categories and rule sets that could accommodate limited forms of adaptive behavior while preserving core speedrunning principles. Documentation preservation efforts intensified as speedrunning communities recognized that their accumulated knowledge and achievements might become impossible to replicate in future gaming environments. Communities began creating comprehensive archives of routing strategies, technique tutorials, and historical records that could preserve speedrunning culture even if the practice itself became impossible. Tool development evolution reflected speedrunning communities' attempts to adapt their technological infrastructure to changing gaming environments. Developers created new software that could handle variable game states, analyze adaptive behaviors, and maintain timing standards across different personalization algorithms. However, these tools faced fundamental limitations when games no longer provided the consistent behavioral patterns that traditional speedrunning tools required. New category experimentation represented creative attempts to preserve speedrunning culture within changing technological constraints. Communities developed seed-based competitions that used specific random generation parameters to create reproducible challenges, snapshot categories that focused on particular game states or configurations, and meta-optimization competitions that challenged players to achieve optimal performance within adaptive systems. Philosophical debates within speedrunning communities during this period reflected deeper questions about the nature of optimization, achievement, and competition within artificial environments. Some community members argued that adapting to dynamic systems represented a natural evolution of speedrunning that could create new forms of challenge and achievement. Others maintained that the elimination of static, analyzable systems fundamentally changed the nature of the practice in ways that made it no longer speedrunning in any meaningful sense. Industry relationships between speedrunning communities and game developers became increasingly complex during this period. Some developers expressed sympathy for speedrunning culture and attempted to include features that could preserve traditional speedrunning possibilities within otherwise adaptive games. However, the fundamental design philosophies driving AI integration often conflicted with the requirements for traditional speedrunning in ways that made meaningful accommodation impossible. Educational applications of speedrunning knowledge became important alternative outlets for community expertise as traditional competitive speedrunning became less viable. Many speedrunners transitioned into educational content creation, game analysis, and community building roles that could preserve and transmit speedrunning culture even as the practice itself evolved beyond recognition. Research contributions from speedrunning communities during this transition period provided valuable insights for academic researchers studying human-computer interaction, adaptive systems design, and community responses to technological change. The detailed documentation of speedrunning culture and its response to technological disruption created rich datasets for understanding how specialized communities adapt to fundamental changes in their technological environments. The psychological impact of these technological changes on speedrunning communities varied significantly among different individuals and subgroups. Some runners found excitement in adapting to new challenges and developing skills for dynamic environments. Others experienced grief and loss as practices they had dedicated years to mastering became impossible to continue. The community's collective response demonstrated remarkable resilience while acknowledging the genuine challenges posed by technological transformation. The fundamental incompatibility between traditional speedrunning and AI-enhanced gaming became undeniable during the late 2020s. As the technological foundations that had enabled 30 years of optimization culture were systematically eliminated by new design philosophies that prioritize personalization, adaptability, and dynamic player engagement over the consistency and predictability that speedrunning required. Understanding why speedrunning became impossible requires examining how each core requirement of speedrunning culture was undermined by well-intentioned technological advances. Deterministic system behavior had been the cornerstone of speedrunning culture, enabling runners to develop precise strategies based on confident predictions about how games would respond to specific inputs. Traditional games operated according to fixed algorithms that produce identical outputs for identical inputs, creating virtual environments that functioned like precise mathematical systems. AI-enhanced games eliminated this determinism by incorporating machine learning systems that could modify their behavior based on accumulated data about player actions, making it impossible to predict how a game would respond to any particular strategy. Route memorization, which had been central to speedrunning achievement, became meaningless when games began generating unique content for each playthrough. Traditional speedrunning required runners to memorize precise sequences of actions, enemy positions, item locations, and environmental obstacles that remained consistent across all attempts. Procedural generation and adaptive content systems ensured that these elements would be different for every player and every playthrough, eliminating the possibility of developing and optimizing consistent routes. Glitch exploitation, which had provided some of speedrunning's most intellectually satisfying challenges, was systematically eliminated by AI-powered debugging and anti-cheat systems. Traditional speedrunning had thrived on discovering and exploiting unintended behaviors in game code, turning programming mistakes into strategic advantages. AI systems became sophisticated enough to identify and patch these exploits in real time, preventing players from developing the deep system knowledge that had been essential to competitive speedrunning. Timing standardization became impossible when games began adapting their pacing and mechanics to individual player performance. Traditional speedrunning required universal timing standards that could enable fair comparison between different players' achievements. Personalization algorithms that adjusted game speed, difficulty, and mechanical behavior for each player eliminated the possibility of establishing meaningful comparative standards, making competitive timing meaningless. Frame-perfect execution, which had represented the pinnacle of speedrunning technical achievement, lost its relevance when games began incorporating latency compensation and input smoothing systems designed to improve casual player experience. AI systems that could predict player intentions and adjust timing windows to accommodate different skill levels eliminated the precision requirements that had made frame-perfect execution both challenging and meaningful. Community verification became enormously complicated when every player's game experience was unique and potentially different. Traditional speedrunning had relied on community experts who could verify achievements by understanding exactly how games should behave under specific conditions. When games began producing different behaviors for different players based on personalized algorithms, it became impossible for community members to distinguish between legitimate optimization and system-assisted performance. Knowledge preservation efforts faced fundamental challenges when the knowledge itself became obsolete due to constantly evolving game systems. Traditional speedrunning communities had built extensive libraries of technical knowledge, strategic insights, and optimization techniques that remained relevant for years or decades. When games began updating their core mechanics continuously through AI-driven balancing systems, this accumulated knowledge became rapidly obsolete, undermining the educational and cultural transmission functions that had been central to speedrunning communities. Version control, which had enabled speedrunning communities to maintain competitive standards across different game releases, became impossible when games evolved continuously through cloud-based AI systems. Traditional speedrunning had established practices for handling discrete game updates while maintaining competitive categories for different versions. Continuous evolution through AI systems eliminated discrete versions entirely, making it impossible to establish stable competitive frameworks. Hardware standardization efforts became meaningless when game performance began depending more on AI processing capabilities and cloud connectivity than local hardware specifications. Traditional speedrunning had developed sophisticated approaches to ensuring fair competition across different hardware configurations. When game behavior began depending on AI systems running on remote servers, local hardware differences became irrelevant while new forms of inequality emerged based on internet connectivity and access to AI processing resources. Tool development for speedrunning analysis became impossible when games no longer provided consistent data for analysis. Traditional speedrunning tools had relied on being able to analyze game behavior, measure timing, and identify optimization opportunities through systematic observation. AI-enhanced games that modified their behavior dynamically provided no consistent patterns for analysis, making traditional speedrunning tools ineffective. Educational applications of speedrunning knowledge became limited when the specific techniques and strategies developed by speedrunning communities were no longer applicable to current games. While the general principles of optimization, thinking, and systematic analysis retained value, the specific technical knowledge that had been speedrunning's primary educational contribution became historically interesting rather than practically applicable. Mathematical optimization, which had been speedrunning's intellectual core, became impossible when the systems being optimized were constantly changing in unpredictable ways. Traditional speedrunning had attracted mathematically minded individuals who enjoyed solving complex optimization problems within well-defined constraints. Systems that could modify these constraints dynamically eliminated the stable problem definitions that mathematical optimization required. Cultural preservation became the primary remaining function for speedrunning communities as the practice itself became impossible to continue. Communities shifted their focus from active competition and optimization to documenting and celebrating their historical achievements while exploring how speedrunning values and approaches might be adapted to new gaming environments. Research value from speedrunning's obsolescence provided important insights for understanding how technological change affects specialized communities and cultural practices. The detailed documentation of speedrunning's decline offered researchers valuable data about community adaptation, cultural preservation, and the relationship between technological capabilities and human creative expression. The philosophical implications of speedrunning's end raised broader questions about the relationship between human agency and AI assistance in gaming and other domains. The elimination of speedrunning represented a shift from games that could be mastered through human dedication and intelligence toward games that manage themselves through artificial intelligence, reflecting broader cultural questions about the role of AI in human achievement and creative expression. As traditional speedrunning became impossible, the gaming landscape of 2030 to 2035 evolved new forms of player challenge and achievement that reflected the capabilities and limitations of AI-enhanced interactive environments. These new practices preserve some elements of the optimization culture and community collaboration that had characterized speedrunning while adapting to the fundamental reality that games could no longer be mastered through static analysis and rote memorization. Adaptive optimization emerged as one of the primary successors to traditional speedrunning, challenging players to achieve optimal performance within dynamically changing systems that required real-time analysis and strategy adaptation. Unlike traditional speedrunning's emphasis on perfecting predetermined routes, adaptive optimization rewarded players who could quickly analyze new situations, identify emerging patterns, and adjust their strategies effectively in response to AI-driven game modifications. Meta-strategy development became a sophisticated practice that focused on understanding and exploiting the AI systems that control game behavior rather than the games themselves. Players developed expertise in recognizing how machine learning algorithms modify game experiences and created strategies for influencing these systems to produce more favorable outcomes. This practice required understanding of AI behavior patterns and statistical analysis rather than the mechanical game knowledge that had defined traditional speedrunning. Collaborative real-time optimization created new forms of community achievement that leveraged distributed problem-solving capabilities to tackle challenges too complex for individual analysis. Teams of players worked together to explore adaptive game systems, sharing real-time observations and developing collective strategies that could respond to dynamic challenges. These collaborative efforts preserved speedrunning's community focus while adapting to environments where individual mastery was no longer possible. Performance consistency challenges emerged as competitions that measured players' ability to maintain high-level performance across varying conditions rather than achieving optimal performance in static environments. These challenges rewarded adaptability, resilience, and broad skill development rather than the specialized mastery and perfectionist execution that had characterized traditional speedrunning. AI interaction mastery became a specialized skill that involved learning to work effectively with game AI systems rather than circumventing or exploiting them. Players develop expertise in communicating with AI systems, understanding their decision-making processes, and collaborating with artificial intelligence to achieve optimal outcomes. This practice represented a fundamental shift from speedrunning's adversarial relationship with game systems toward collaborative human-AI achievement. Dynamic puzzle solving created new competitive formats that generated unique challenges for each participant while maintaining comparative standards for achievement evaluation. These competitions used AI systems to create personalized challenges of equivalent difficulty, enabling fair competition while accommodating the personalization that made traditional timing comparisons impossible. System analysis racing emerged as competitions focused on how quickly players could understand and adapt to new AI-generated challenges. These events tested players' ability to analyze unfamiliar systems, identify optimal strategies, and execute effective approaches within limited timeframes. This practice preserved speedrunning's emphasis on analysis and optimization while adapting to environments where advanced preparation was impossible. Influence. Optimization competitions challenged players to achieve maximum impact on game systems through minimal actions, requiring sophisticated understanding of leverage points and systemic effects within complex AI-managed environments. These challenges rewarded strategic thinking and system understanding rather than execution speed or mechanical precision. Collective achievement projects created large-scale collaborative challenges that could only be completed through coordination among hundreds or thousands of participants. These projects preserved speedrunning's community focus while creating achievement scales that matched the complexity and scope of AI-enhanced gaming environments. Educational achievement frameworks emerged that rewarded players for demonstrating understanding of complex systems, teaching effective strategies to other players, and contributing to collective knowledge development. These frameworks preserve speedrunning's educational tradition while adapting to environments where knowledge became obsolete more rapidly. Artistic performance competitions focused on creating aesthetically pleasing or emotionally resonant experiences within AI-enhanced games rather than achieving optimal efficiency. These competitions preserve speedrunning's performance aspect while shifting focus from technical optimization to creative expression and artistic achievement. Accessibility innovation challenges rewarded players who discovered ways to make AI-enhanced games more accessible to players with different abilities or technological resources. These challenges preserved speedrunning's innovation tradition while directing that creativity towards socially beneficial outcomes. Cultural preservation efforts within modern gaming communities maintain connections to speedrunning history while adapting its values and practices to contemporary technological realities. These efforts included educational programs, historical documentation projects, and community traditions that preserved speedrunning culture even as the practice itself became impossible. Research contribution opportunities enabled former speedrunners to apply their analytical skills and system understanding to academic and commercial research projects that benefited from their unique expertise. Many speedrunning community members found meaningful applications for their skills in AI development, human-computer interaction research, and gaming accessibility projects. Community leadership roles emerged for experienced speedrunners who could guide the adaptation of speedrunning communities to new gaming environments while preserving their positive cultural values. These leaders helped bridge the gap between speedrunning's historical achievements and the community's future development within AI-enhanced gaming culture. Mentorship programs connected experienced speedrunners with younger players who were developing skills in adaptive gaming environments, preserving the knowledge transmission traditions that had been central to speedrunning culture while adapting educational approaches to new technological realities. Historical documentation projects enabled speedrunning communities to preserve their achievements and cultural knowledge for future study, while contributing to broader understanding of how specialized communities adapt to technological change. These projects ensured that speedrunning's legacy would remain accessible even as the practice itself became impossible. Innovation transfer initiatives explored how speedrunning's analytical approaches, optimization techniques, and community practices could be adapted to other domains where similar challenges existed. These initiatives demonstrated that speedrunning's intellectual contributions had value beyond gaming contexts. Therapeutic applications of speedrunning principles emerged in contexts where the systematic approach to improvement, collaborative learning, and positive perfectionism that had characterized speedrunning could support mental health and personal development goals. The philosophical evolution of former speedrunning communities reflected broader questions about human achievement, technological assistance, and the nature of challenge in AI-enhanced environments. These discussions contributed to cultural conversations about how human creativity and achievement could be preserved and celebrated in increasingly automated technological contexts. The recognition that speedrunning represented a unique and irreplaceable cultural phenomenon led to comprehensive preservation efforts during the early 2030s. As communities, institutions, and researchers worked to document and maintain access to the knowledge, achievements, and cultural practices that had defined 3 decades of optimization culture. These preservation initiatives reflected both the historical significance of speedrunning and the broader challenge of maintaining digital cultural heritage in rapidly evolving technological environments. Academic documentation projects emerged from universities and research institutions that recognized speedrunning as a significant cultural phenomenon worthy of scholarly study and preservation. Anthropologists, sociologists, and game studies researchers collaborated with speedrunning communities to create comprehensive ethnographic records that captured not just individual achievements, but the broader cultural practices, social dynamics, and intellectual traditions that had characterized speedrunning communities. Digital archival initiatives focused on preserving the vast quantities of video documentation, written guides, and community discussions that had accumulated during speedrunning's peak years. These efforts required sophisticated technical solutions for maintaining access to video content across changing platform standards while preserving the contextual information and community commentary that made these archives culturally meaningful rather than merely technical repositories. Community-driven preservation projects demonstrated the speedrunning community's commitment to maintaining their own cultural heritage through volunteer efforts and collaborative documentation. Longtime community members organized systematic efforts to collect, organize, and preserve routing documents, tutorial videos, and historical records that might otherwise be lost as individual websites and platforms disappeared. Oral history collection efforts recognized that much of speedrunning culture existed in informal knowledge, personal relationships, and community memories that would be lost if not systematically documented. Researchers conducted extensive interviews with significant speedrunning figures, community leaders, and longtime participants to capture the personal experiences and cultural insights that had shaped speedrunning development. Interactive museum installations began appearing in gaming museums and technology centers, providing hands-on experiences that could help future visitors understand speedrunning culture and achievement. These installations often included original hardware, demonstration videos, and interactive challenges that could convey the skill and dedication required for speedrunning achievement. Educational curriculum development incorporated speedrunning examples and case studies into academic programs focused on gaming culture, human-computer interaction, and community studies. These educational applications ensured that speedrunning's intellectual contributions would continue to influence learning and research, even as the practice itself became impossible. Technical documentation preservation efforts focused on maintaining access to the specialized tools, software, and analysis techniques that had been developed by speedrunning communities. These preservation projects recognized that speedrunning's technological innovations had value beyond their original gaming applications and might inform future developments in performance analysis and community coordination tools. Cultural context preservation initiatives worked to document the broader gaming and technological environments that had enabled speedrunning culture, ensuring that future researchers would be able to understand the specific conditions that had made speedrunning possible and meaningful. These efforts included documentation of hardware capabilities, software limitations, and community technologies that had shaped speedrunning development. International coordination efforts brought together preservation initiatives from different countries and cultures to create comprehensive global archives that could capture speedrunning's international scope and cultural diversity. These collaborative projects required careful attention to different languages, cultural context, and preservation standards while maintaining unified approaches to documentation and access. Legal framework development addressed the complex intellectual property and access issues associated with preserving gaming content, community-created materials, and commercial software in ways that could serve research and educational purposes while respecting creator rights and commercial interests. Funding strategies for preservation efforts combine academic grants, community fundraising, and institutional support to create sustainable financial models for long-term preservation work. These funding approaches recognized that meaningful preservation required ongoing maintenance and access support rather than one-time archival projects. Quality standards development ensured that preservation efforts would meet professional archival standards while serving the specific needs of researchers and community members interested in speedrunning culture. These standards address technical specifications, metadata requirements, and access protocols that could maintain preservation quality over time. Access system design created user-friendly interfaces and search capabilities that could make preserved speedrunning materials accessible to diverse audiences, including researchers, educators, community members, and general public users with different levels of technical knowledge and cultural familiarity. Collaboration protocols between preservation projects enabled resource sharing, expertise exchange, and coordinated development that could maximize the effectiveness of individual preservation efforts while avoiding duplication and ensuring comprehensive coverage of speedrunning culture. Research application frameworks established guidelines and resources for academic researchers who wanted to use preserved speedrunning materials for scholarly analysis, ensuring that preservation efforts would serve active research purposes while protecting community privacy and respecting cultural sensitivities. Community engagement strategies maintained ongoing relationships between preservation projects and speedrunning communities, ensuring that preservation efforts would reflect community values and priorities, while providing ongoing opportunities for community members to contribute to preservation activities. Technology migration planning addressed the ongoing challenge of maintaining access to preserved materials as digital technologies continue to evolve, developing strategies for format migration, platform updates, and long-term technical sustainability that could preserve access across technological changes. Cultural sensitivity protocols ensured that preservation efforts would respect the values, privacy concerns, and intellectual property rights of speedrunning communities while making materials available for legitimate research and educational purposes. Impact assessment frameworks measured the effectiveness of preservation efforts in serving their intended purposes of cultural documentation, research support, and educational resource provision, while identifying areas for improvement and expansion. Future research preparation involved organizing preserved materials and developing research tools that could support future scholarly analysis of speedrunning culture, ensuring that preservation efforts would continue to generate new insights and understanding long after the completion of initial documentation projects. Training programs for digital preservationists provided specialized education in the unique challenges and opportunities associated with gaming culture preservation, developing expertise that could serve speedrunning preservation while contributing to broader digital heritage preservation capabilities. Public engagement initiatives created opportunities for general audiences to learn about speedrunning culture and its historical significance through exhibitions, educational programs, and media presentations that could raise awareness of digital culture preservation issues while celebrating speedrunning achievements. The comprehensive scope of speedrunning preservation efforts reflected recognition that this unique cultural phenomenon deserved the same careful documentation and institutional support provided to other significant cultural movements, ensuring that future generations would be able to understand and appreciate one of the most remarkable communities to emerge from digital culture. The scholarly examination of speedrunning culture during its peak years and subsequent transformation has provided researchers across multiple disciplines with unprecedented insights into community formation, technological adaptation, and human performance optimization within digital environments. Academic study of speedrunning has revealed patterns and principles that illuminate broader questions about expertise development, collective intelligence, and cultural preservation in technological contexts. Anthropological analysis of speedrunning communities has revealed sophisticated social structures and cultural practices that emerged organically from shared technical challenges and competitive cooperation. Researchers have documented how speedrunning communities develop their own forms of social organization, knowledge transmission, and cultural identity that functioned effectively across geographical and cultural boundaries while maintaining strong internal cohesion and shared values. Sociological research on speedrunning has examined how these communities created inclusive environments that balance competitive achievement with collaborative learning and mutual support. Studies have revealed how speedrunning communities develop social norms and practices that encourage newcomer participation while maintaining high standards for achievement and contribution, creating models for community building that have applications beyond gaming contexts. Psychological studies of speedrunning have provided valuable insights into motivation, learning, and performance optimization that have informed broader understanding of human potential and achievement. Research has examined how speedrunners developed extraordinary skills through deliberate practice, maintained motivation through long periods of incremental improvement, and manage the psychological challenges associated with pursuing perfection within clearly defined parameters. Educational research on speedrunning communities has documented sophisticated informal learning systems that often exceeded formal educational institutions in their effectiveness at teaching complex technical skills and analytical thinking. Studies have examined how speedrunning communities created educational resources, mentorship relationships, and collaborative learning environments that could serve as models for technical education and skill development. Technology studies research has analyzed how speedrunning communities developed innovative tools and techniques for performance measurement, analysis, and improvement that often anticipated or exceeded commercial technology development. Academic analysis of speedrunning technology has informed understanding of user-driven innovation, community-based development, and the relationship between technical constraints and creative problem-solving. Game studies scholarship has examined speedrunning as a form of play that transformed entertainment products into platforms for artistic expression, mathematical optimization, and community building. This research has contributed to theoretical understanding of player agency, game interpretation, and the relationship between design intention and player creativity within digital environments. Cultural studies analysis has positioned speedrunning within broader contexts of digital culture, globalization, and technological mediation of human experience. Scholars have examined how speedrunning communities negotiated issues of cultural identity, international cooperation, and technological dependency while maintaining distinctive cultural practices and values. Economics research on speedrunning has analyzed how these communities created value through voluntary participation, knowledge sharing, and collaborative achievement without traditional market mechanisms. Studies have examined speedrunning as an example of gift economy principles and peer production that provided insights into alternative economic models for creative and intellectual work. Mathematical analysis of speedrunning optimization has provided case studies in applied optimization theory, statistical analysis, and algorithmic thinking that have informed understanding of how non-specialists can develop sophisticated mathematical capabilities through practical application and community collaboration. Media studies research has examined how speedrunning communities used various communication technologies to coordinate global collaboration, document achievements, and create educational content that served both internal community needs and external cultural communication. This research has informed understanding of how specialized communities can effectively use media technologies for knowledge sharing and cultural preservation. Philosophy research on speedrunning has explored questions about the nature of achievement, the relationship between human capability and technological constraint, and the meaning of perfection within artificial systems. Philosophical analysis has examined speedrunning as a form of existential practice that provided meaning and purpose through voluntary acceptance of challenging constraints. Historical research has documented speedrunning's development within broader contexts of gaming culture evolution, technological advancement, and digital community formation. Historians have analyzed speedrunning as a significant cultural movement that reflected broader social trends while maintaining distinctive characteristics that contributed to cultural diversity and innovation. Cognitive science research has studied speedrunning as a context for understanding expertise development, pattern recognition, and human-computer interaction. Studies have examined how speedrunners develop specialized cognitive skills and how their approach to complex problem-solving could inform understanding of human learning and performance capabilities. Communication studies research has analyzed how speedrunning communities develop effective practices for technical communication, cross-cultural collaboration, and knowledge preservation that could serve as models for international cooperation and community building in various contexts. Performance studies scholarship has examined speedrunning as a form of embodied performance that combined physical skill, intellectual analysis, and aesthetic expression within technological context. This research has contributed to understanding of how performance practices adapt to technological mediation while maintaining essential human elements. Ethics research has examined the moral frameworks that guided speedrunning communities' approaches to competition, knowledge sharing, and technological use. Studies have analyzed how communities developed ethical guidelines that balance individual achievement with collective benefit, while maintaining integrity and fairness in competitive contexts. Future studies research has analyzed speedrunning's transformation and obsolescence as a case study in technological disruption and cultural adaptation. This research has informed understanding of how technological change affects specialized communities and what factors determine successful adaptation versus cultural loss. Digital humanities research has developed new methodologies for analyzing large collections of speedrunning content, community discussions, and achievement data to identify patterns and trends that were not visible through traditional research approaches. These methodological innovations have applications for studying other forms of digital culture and online communities. Public policy research has examined how speedrunning communities' approaches to self-governance, dispute resolution, and quality assurance could inform governance frameworks for other online communities and digital platforms. The interdisciplinary scope of academic speedrunning research reflects the cultural phenomenon's richness and complexity, while demonstrating how specialized community practices can provide insights that benefit broader understanding of human capability, community organization, and technological adaptation. Academic preservation of speedrunning research ensures that scholarly insights will remain accessible for future researchers, while contributing to cumulative knowledge about digital culture, community formation, and human performance that extends well beyond gaming context. The theoretical contributions of speedrunning research have influenced academic thinking about expertise, community, technology, and culture in ways that continue to generate new research questions and methodological approaches for understanding human experience in technological environments. The cultural disconnection between those who experience speedrunning culture and younger generations who have only known AI-enhanced gaming represents one of the most poignant aspects of speedrunning's transformation into a historical curiosity. The challenge of explaining speedrunning to individuals who have never experienced static, predictable games illuminates broader questions about cultural transmission, technological understanding, and the preservation of human achievements that depend on obsolete technological contexts. Conceptual barriers to understanding speedrunning arise from fundamental differences in how different generations experience and think about games and optimization. Young people who have only known personalized, adaptive gaming experiences often struggle to understand why anyone would want to play the same game repeatedly in exactly the same way, or why achieving marginally faster completion times would be considered meaningful achievement rather than pointless repetition. The explanation challenge faced by speedrunning veterans reflects the difficulty of conveying the intellectual satisfaction and community meaning that emerged from practices that appear arbitrary or obsessive to outsiders. Describing the mathematical beauty of frame, perfect execution, or the social bonds formed around shared optimization goals requires communicating not just technical information, but entire cultural frameworks and value systems. Educational analogies that speedrunning advocates use to explain their practice to younger generations often draw comparisons to traditional sports, musical performance, or mathematical problem solving. However, these analogies often fail to capture speedrunning's unique combination of technical analysis, competitive cooperation, and relationship with technological constraints that made the practice distinctive. Technological literacy gaps between generations create additional barriers to understanding speedrunning culture. Younger players who have never experienced hardware limitations, version control issues, or static game content may struggle to understand the technical context that made speedrunning both possible and necessary as a form of creative expression within technological constraints. Cultural preservation efforts have attempted to bridge generational understanding through interactive demonstrations, historical gaming experiences, and educational programs that can provide hands-on experience with the technological conditions that enabled speedrunning. These efforts often reveal how much contemporary gaming experience has been shaped by AI enhancement and personalization. Museum exhibitions and cultural installations have developed innovative approaches to conveying speedrunning culture to audiences with no prior experience or context. These exhibits often combine historical gaming hardware, video documentation, and interactive challenges that can help visitors understand the skill and dedication required for speedrunning achievement. Documentary projects have attempted to capture the human stories and cultural significance of speedrunning for general audiences who might not understand the technical aspects but could appreciate the community values and personal dedication that characterize speedrunning culture. These documentaries often focus on individual stories and community achievements rather than technical optimization details. Intergenerational dialogue within families and communities has created opportunities for knowledge transmission and cultural understanding between speedrunning veterans and younger family members. These personal conversations often prove more effective than formal educational approaches for conveying the meaning and significance of speedrunning culture. Academic mediation through scholarly research and educational curricula has provided frameworks for understanding speedrunning as a legitimate cultural phenomenon worthy of study and respect. Academic validation often helps younger generations appreciate speedrunning's intellectual and cultural contributions, even if they cannot directly experience the practice. Community mentorship programs have connected speedrunning veterans with younger players interested in understanding gaming history and culture. These mentorship relationships often evolve beyond speedrunning education to encompass broader discussions about technology, community, and human achievement within digital environments. Historical context education helps younger generations understand speedrunning within broader narratives of gaming culture evolution, technological development, and digital community formation. This contextual approach often makes speedrunning more comprehensible as part of larger cultural and technological trends rather than an isolated curiosity. Skill translation efforts have explored how speedrunning's analytical approaches, optimization techniques, and community practices might be applied to contemporary gaming challenges. These efforts help younger players understand speedrunning's relevance by connecting historical practices to current interests and capabilities. Cultural bridge-building initiatives have brought together speedrunning veterans and contemporary gaming communities to share perspectives and find common ground around shared values like technical excellence, community cooperation, and creative problem-solving within gaming contexts. Philosophical discussions about speedrunning often focus on broader questions about human achievement, technological mediation, and the nature of challenge and accomplishment that resonate across generational boundaries. These discussions can help younger generations understand speedrunning's deeper significance beyond its specific technical practices. Creative adaptations of speedrunning concepts have emerged in contemporary gaming contexts where similar values of optimization, community collaboration, and systematic improvement can be pursued within AI-enhanced environments. These adaptations help preserve speedrunning's cultural contributions while adapting to current technological realities. Oral history projects have documented speedrunning veterans' personal experiences and insights for preservation and transmission to future generations. These personal narratives often prove more engaging and meaningful than technical documentation for helping younger audiences understand speedrunning's human significance. Technology education programs have used speedrunning as a case study for teaching about human-computer interaction, community-driven innovation, and the relationship between technological constraints and creative expression. These educational applications help younger learners understand speedrunning's broader relevance to technology and society. Cultural heritage. Recognition efforts have worked to establish speedrunning's significance within broader contexts of digital culture and technological history. Official recognition often helps legitimize speedrunning culture for younger generations who might otherwise dismiss it as a historical curiosity. Research collaboration between speedrunning veterans and younger researchers has created opportunities for knowledge transfer and mutual learning that can bridge generational gaps while advancing understanding of digital culture and community formation. Media representation of speedrunning in contemporary entertainment often shapes how younger generations understand and value this historical practice. Thoughtful media coverage can help establish speedrunning's cultural significance while avoiding trivializing or misrepresenting its achievements and contributions. The ongoing challenge of intergenerational cultural transmission reflects broader questions about how societies preserve and value cultural practices that depend on obsolete technologies while finding ways to maintain their underlying values and insights within changing technological context. The intellectual and cultural contributions of speedrunning extend far beyond gaming contexts to offer profound insights into fundamental questions about human motivation, community cooperation, and the relationship between technological constraints and creative expression. The philosophical legacy of speedrunning continues to influence thinking about human potential, collective achievement, and the nature of meaningful accomplishment within artificial systems. The concept of voluntary constraint acceptance that characterized speedrunning provides insights into how humans create meaning and challenge within artificially defined parameters. Speedrunning demonstrated that people could find deep satisfaction and purpose through accepting arbitrary limitations and pursuing excellence within those constraints, revealing something essential about human psychology and the nature of achievement motivation. Community formation around shared technical challenges illustrated how sophisticated social structures and cultural practices could emerge organically from common interests and collaborative problem-solving. Speedrunning communities developed effective approaches to knowledge sharing, newcomer integration, and collective achievement that provided models for cooperation and mutual support in various contexts. The relationship between individual achievement and collective knowledge that characterized speedrunning revealed how personal accomplishment could coexist with extensive knowledge sharing and collaborative improvement. Speedrunning culture demonstrated that competition and cooperation could be mutually reinforcing rather than contradictory, creating environments where individual success contributed to collective advancement. Human technology. Interaction within speedrunning illustrated sophisticated approaches to understanding and exploiting technological systems without losing essential human agency and creativity. Speedrunners developed expertise in working with technological constraints while maintaining human control and decision-making, providing models for beneficial human-technology collaboration. The psychology of incremental improvement that drove speedrunning motivation offers insights into sustainable approaches to skill development and long-term achievement. Speedrunning demonstrated how people could maintain motivation and find satisfaction through gradual progress and systematic improvement over extended periods, revealing important principles for learning and personal development. Perfectionist achievement channeled toward positive outcomes showed how obsessive tendencies and detail-oriented thinking could be directed toward constructive purposes that created value for individuals and communities. Speedrunning provided examples of how perfectionism could be healthy and productive when focused on clear goals within supportive community context. Global cooperation across cultural and linguistic boundaries illustrated how technical interests and shared challenges could create meaningful connections between people from diverse backgrounds. Speedrunning communities developed effective approaches to international collaboration that transcended traditional barriers while respecting cultural differences and individual perspectives. Knowledge preservation and transmission within speedrunning communities demonstrated sophisticated approaches to maintaining collective expertise and ensuring that accumulated knowledge would benefit future generations. These practices provided models for cultural preservation and educational transmission that had applications beyond gaming context. Mathematical thinking applied to recreational contexts showed how abstract analytical skills could emerge from practical problem solving within engaging environments. Speedrunning demonstrated that mathematical and analytical capabilities could be developed through voluntary participation in challenging activities rather than formal educational requirements. The ethics of competition and achievement within speedrunning communities revealed frameworks for balancing individual accomplishment with community values and mutual support. Speedrunning culture developed approaches to competition that encouraged excellence while maintaining collaborative relationships and inclusive community environments. Meaning-making within artificial systems illustrated how humans could find genuine purpose and satisfaction through activities that existed entirely within technological constructs. Speedrunning demonstrated that virtual achievements could provide real fulfillment and contribute to personal development and community building in meaningful ways. Adaptation to technological change that characterized speedrunning's decline provided insights into how specialized communities respond to fundamental disruptions of their technological foundations. The speedrunning community's attempts to preserve their culture while adapting to new realities offered lessons about resilience, cultural preservation, and technological adaptation. The relationship between mastery and humility that characterized experienced speedrunners revealed how deep expertise could coexist with continued learning, knowledge sharing, and respect for others' achievements. Speedrunning culture demonstrated how mastery could be pursued without arrogance or exclusivity. Collaborative problem-solving at scale within speedrunning communities illustrated how large groups of people could coordinate effectively around shared technical challenges without formal organizational structures. These practices provided models for distributed problem-solving and collective intelligence that had applications in various domains. The integration of analytical and creative thinking that characterized speedrunning optimization demonstrated how mathematical analysis and creative insight could be mutually reinforcing rather than conflicting approaches to problem solving. Speedrunning showed how technical optimization could be a form of creative expression. Cultural impact beyond immediate participants illustrated how specialized communities could influence broader cultural conversations and contribute to general understanding of human capability and technological interaction. Speedrunning's influence on gaming culture, educational practices, and community organization extended far beyond the speedrunning community itself. The documentation and study of speedrunning culture provided insights into how digital communities form, evolve, and adapt to changing technological conditions. Academic research on speedrunning contributed to broader understanding of online community dynamics, technological mediation of social interaction, and digital culture formation. Technological innovation driven by community needs demonstrated how user communities could develop sophisticated tools and techniques that anticipated or exceeded commercial technology development. Speedrunning communities' technological contributions provided models for community-driven innovation and open-source development. The preservation of human agency within technological contexts that characterized speedrunning philosophy offered frameworks for maintaining human control and creativity in increasingly automated technological environments. Speedrunning's emphasis on human skill and decision-making provided models for beneficial human-technology relationships. Educational applications of speedrunning principles revealed how engagement-driven learning could be more effective than traditional instructional approaches for developing complex skills and analytical thinking. The informal educational systems within speedrunning communities provided models for alternative approaches to skill development and knowledge transmission. The demonstration of human potential within constrained environments illustrated how creativity and achievement could flourish when people accepted limitations and worked systematically within defined parameters. Speedrunning showed how constraints could enable rather than limit human expression and accomplishment. The philosophical legacy of speedrunning continues to influence thinking about human potential, community cooperation, and the relationship between technology and human flourishing in ways that remain relevant for addressing contemporary challenges around AI integration, community building, and meaningful achievement in technological contexts. The cultural and technical innovations pioneered by speedrunning communities continue to influence contemporary gaming development and player culture in subtle but significant ways, demonstrating how the values and practices of historical gaming communities can persist and evolve even when their original forms become impossible. The echoes of speedrunning in modern AI-enhanced gaming reveal both the enduring relevance of optimization culture and the creative adaptation of community-driven innovation. AI system design in contemporary games often incorporates insights derived from speedrunning community practices, particularly in areas of performance measurement, skill assessment, and adaptive challenge calibration. Game developers who studied speedrunning communities gained valuable understanding of how players approach systematic improvement and optimal performance, informing the development of AI systems that can effectively support and challenge players seeking improvement. Community features in modern games frequently reflect organizational principles and social dynamics that were pioneered within speedrunning communities. The emphasis on knowledge sharing, collaborative improvement, and inclusive competition that characterize speedrunning culture influence the design of social systems in contemporary games that aim to foster positive community interactions and collective achievement. Educational integration in gaming applications often draws upon the informal learning systems and mentorship practices that emerged within speedrunning communities. Contemporary educational games and training applications incorporate principles of peer learning, incremental skill development, and performance analysis that were refined through decades of speedrunning community experience. Performance analytics in modern gaming systems reflect sophisticated measurement and analysis techniques that were originally developed by speedrunning communities for understanding and improving human performance within digital environments. Contemporary games use similar analytical approaches to provide players with detailed feedback about their performance and improvement opportunities. Tool development approaches in the gaming industry continue to be influenced by the open-source, community-driven innovation that characterize speedrunning tool creation. Many contemporary gaming development tools incorporate collaborative development practices and user-driven feature development that were pioneered by speedrunning communities. Quality assurance practices in modern game development often incorporate verification techniques and community moderation approaches that were developed by speedrunning communities for maintaining competitive integrity and preventing fraud. These practices have been adapted to address contemporary challenges around AI-assisted performance and automated achievement systems. Accessibility design in contemporary games frequently reflects the inclusive community values and universal design principles that emerged within speedrunning communities. The speedrunning community's emphasis on enabling participation across diverse skill levels and capabilities influenced contemporary approaches to accessible game design and inclusive community building. Optimization culture within modern gaming communities preserves many of the analytical approaches and systematic thinking that characterize speedrunning, adapted to contemporary challenges that involve understanding and working effectively with AI systems rather than exploiting static game code. Documentation practices in contemporary gaming communities often reflect the comprehensive knowledge preservation and educational content creation that characterize speedrunning culture. Modern gaming communities use similar approaches to documenting strategies, sharing knowledge, and preserving community expertise. International cooperation frameworks in modern gaming development and community management draw upon the cross-cultural collaboration practices that were pioneered by global speedrunning communities. These frameworks incorporate approaches to language translation, cultural sensitivity, and inclusive participation that were refined through speedrunning community experience. Research methodologies for studying gaming communities and player behavior often incorporate analytical techniques and data collection approaches that were originally developed for understanding speedrunning communities. Academic research on contemporary gaming frequently uses methodological frameworks that were pioneered in speedrunning studies. Competitive framework design in modern gaming attempts to preserve the collaborative competition and mutual support that characterized speedrunning culture while adapting to AI-enhanced gaming environments. Contemporary competitive gaming systems often incorporate features that encourage knowledge sharing and community building alongside individual achievement. Innovation transfer from speedrunning communities has influenced various non-gaming applications, including educational technology, performance training systems, and community coordination platforms. The systematic approaches to improvement and collaborative problem-solving developed by speedrunning communities have found applications in diverse contexts that benefit from similar analytical and social frameworks. Cultural preservation efforts in contemporary gaming often reflect the historical consciousness and documentation practices that characterize later speedrunning communities. Modern gaming culture includes increased attention to preserving community knowledge, documenting achievement histories, and maintaining access to important cultural artifacts. Mentorship traditions within contemporary gaming communities frequently incorporate the knowledge transmission and newcomer support practices that were central to speedrunning culture. Modern gaming communities use similar approaches to connecting experienced players with newcomers and facilitating skill development through peer learning. Technology integration approaches in contemporary gaming development often reflect the user-driven innovation and community-responsive development that characterize speedrunning tool creation. Modern gaming development increasingly incorporates community feedback and user-driven feature development in ways that were pioneered by speedrunning communities. Ethics frameworks for contemporary gaming communities frequently draw upon the fairness principles and integrity standards that were developed by speedrunning communities for managing competition and maintaining community trust. These ethical frameworks have been adapted to address contemporary challenges around AI assistance and automated performance enhancement. Performance philosophy in modern gaming culture preserves many of the attitudes toward improvement, challenge acceptance, and collaborative achievement that characterized speedrunning culture. Contemporary players and developers continue to value systematic improvement, analytical thinking, and community cooperation in ways that reflect speedrunning's cultural influence. The adaptation strategies that were developed by speedrunning communities in response to technological change provide models for how contemporary gaming communities respond to ongoing AI advancement and technological disruption. These strategies inform community resilience and cultural preservation efforts in rapidly changing technological environments. Educational applications of speedrunning principles continue to influence contemporary approaches to skill development, training system design, and informal learning environments. The engagement-driven learning and peer-supported improvement that characterize speedrunning education remain relevant for contemporary educational technology and community-based learning initiatives. The lasting influence of speedrunning culture demonstrates how specialized communities can create enduring contributions that transcend their original technological contexts, providing insights and innovations that continue to benefit broader cultural and technological development long after their original practices become impossible. The relationship between memory and technological obsolescence in the context of speedrunning creates a unique form of cultural melancholy that illuminates broader questions about how we preserve and value human achievements that depend on specific technological contexts. The nostalgia surrounding speedrunning culture reflects not just personal attachment to past experiences, but deeper concerns about cultural continuity, technological determination, and the preservation of human agency within rapidly evolving digital environments. Personal memory and individual nostalgia for speedrunning experiences often center around moments of achievement, community connection, and intellectual discovery that occurred within now impossible technological contexts. Former speedrunners describe their memories of perfect runs, breakthrough optimizations, and community celebrations with a poignancy that reflects the irreplaceable nature of these experiences and their connection to specific technological conditions. Collective memory within speedrunning communities has created shared narratives and cultural touchstones that continue to provide meaning and identity for community members, even as their original context has disappeared. These collective memories serve important functions for community continuity, while highlighting the challenges of maintaining cultural identity when foundational practices become impossible. Digital heritage preservation efforts surrounding speedrunning reflect broader societal concerns about maintaining access to cultural achievements that exist primarily in digital formats. The challenge of preserving speedrunning culture illustrates general problems of digital preservation while highlighting the specific difficulties of maintaining interactive cultural practices that depend on obsolete technologies. Technological nostalgia associated with speedrunning extends beyond specific games or achievements to encompass entire technological paradigms that enabled human agency, systematic analysis, and individual mastery within digital environments. This nostalgia reflects concerns about the relationship between human capability and technological assistance in contemporary AI-enhanced environments. Cultural transmission challenges in speedrunning preservation highlight the difficulty of conveying the meaning and significance of cultural practices to people who have never experienced the technological conditions that made those practices possible. These challenges reflect broader questions about how societies maintain cultural knowledge across technological transitions. Intergenerational dialogue about speedrunning often reveals different attitudes toward technological change, human achievement, and the value of specialized cultural practices. These conversations illuminate broader cultural tensions between technological progress and cultural preservation, individual agency and systematic assistance. Memory, authenticity questions arise when speedrunning experiences are preserved through documentation, simulation, or historical recreation rather than direct participation. These questions reflect broader concerns about the relationship between mediated and immediate experience in digital culture and the challenges of authentic cultural preservation. Emotional processing of speedrunning's obsolescence involves grief, acceptance, and adaptation processes that provide insights into how individuals and communities respond to fundamental changes in their technological and cultural environments. These emotional responses reflect broader patterns of adaptation to technological disruption and cultural change. Comparative nostalgia analysis reveals how speedrunning nostalgia differs from other forms of technological or cultural nostalgia in its focus on human agency, systematic achievement, and community cooperation rather than simple aesthetic preference or emotional attachment. This analysis illuminates what was unique and valuable about speedrunning culture. Cultural value assessment of speedrunning heritage raises questions about how societies determine which cultural practices deserve preservation and institutional support when resources for cultural preservation are limited. These assessments reflect broader priorities about cultural diversity, technological heritage, and the value of specialized community achievements. Documentation adequacy concerns address whether current preservation efforts can effectively capture and transmit the essential elements of speedrunning culture for future understanding and appreciation. These concerns highlight the limitations of any preservation effort and the inevitable losses associated with cultural transition. Simulation possibilities for recreating speedrunning experiences raise questions about authenticity, accessibility, and the relationship between historical recreation and original cultural experience. These possibilities offer potential solutions for cultural preservation while raising new questions about mediated heritage and authentic engagement. Educational applications of speedrunning nostalgia explore how emotional attachment to historical practices can motivate learning about broader cultural, technological, and social issues. These applications demonstrate how nostalgia can serve constructive educational purposes while highlighting the importance of emotional engagement in cultural transmission. Therapeutic aspects of speedrunning nostalgia address how engagement with cultural heritage can support individual and community well-being during periods of technological and social change. These therapeutic functions demonstrate the personal and social value of cultural preservation beyond purely historical or educational purposes. Research implications of speedrunning nostalgia provide insights into how people form emotional attachments to technological practices and how these attachments influence responses to technological change. This research contributes to broader understanding of human-technology relationships and cultural adaptation processes. Philosophical reflection on speedrunning's obsolescence raises broader questions about the nature of progress, the value of human agency, and the relationship between technological capability and human flourishing. These philosophical considerations extend well beyond gaming contexts to address fundamental questions about technology and society. Community continuity efforts within former speedrunning communities demonstrate how cultural groups can maintain identity and social connections even when their foundational practices become impossible. These efforts provide models for community resilience and cultural adaptation that have applications beyond gaming contexts. Creative adaptation of speedrunning values and practices into contemporary contexts shows how cultural innovations can persist and evolve even when their original forms become obsolete. These adaptations demonstrate the lasting value of speedrunning's cultural contributions while illustrating processes of cultural evolution and transformation. Legacy planning within speedrunning communities reflects conscious efforts to ensure that cultural achievements and insights will be preserved and transmitted to future generations, even as the original practices become impossible. These planning efforts demonstrate the forward-thinking and cultural consciousness that characterized speedrunning communities. The melancholic dimension of speedrunning preservation reflects a mature understanding that cultural change inevitably involves both gains and losses, and that acknowledging loss is an important part of cultural adaptation and growth. This melancholy serves important functions for community processing and cultural reflection while highlighting the human costs of technological progress. Future implications of speedrunning nostalgia suggest that similar cultural preservation challenges will arise as other technological practices become obsolete, requiring societies to develop better frameworks for identifying, preserving, and transmitting cultural achievements that depend on specific technological conditions. As we conclude our comprehensive journey through the remarkable cultural phenomenon of speedrunning, we find ourselves contemplating not merely the rise and fall of a gaming subculture, but a profound demonstration of humanity's eternal drive to find meaning, community, and excellence within any set of constraints, no matter how artificial or temporary those constraints might prove to be. The story of speedrunning illuminates fundamental truths about human nature that transcend its specific technological context and continue to inform our understanding of achievement, community, and purposeful living in our AI-enhanced world of 2035. The essence of speedrunning lay not in the specific games that were optimized or the particular techniques that were mastered, but in the demonstration that humans possess an inexhaustible capacity to transform arbitrary limitations into meaningful challenges and to build thriving communities around shared pursuit of excellence. The speedrunning community created something beautiful and significant from the simple premise that completing entertainment software as quickly as possible could become a legitimate form of human achievement worthy of dedication, analysis, and celebration. The intellectual contributions of speedrunning extended far beyond gaming to demonstrate sophisticated applications of mathematical thinking, systematic analysis, and collaborative problem-solving that emerged organically from community enthusiasm rather than formal educational requirements. Speedrunners developed expertise in probability calculation, optimization theory, statistical analysis, and reverse engineering through voluntary pursuit of recreational goals, illustrating the remarkable learning potential that emerges when engagement and purpose align with challenging intellectual demands. The social innovations pioneered by speedrunning communities provided models for international cooperation, inclusive competition, and knowledge preservation that have influenced community building and cultural preservation efforts across various domains. The speedrunning community's success in maintaining collaborative values while pursuing individual excellence, supporting newcomers while celebrating expertise, and preserving knowledge while encouraging innovation created frameworks for community organization that remain relevant for contemporary digital culture. The technological legacy of speedrunning includes not only the specific tools and techniques developed by community members, but the broader demonstration that user communities can drive innovation, establish standards, and create sophisticated technical solutions when motivated by shared purposes and supported by collaborative culture. The open-source development practices, quality assurance methods, and verification systems developed by speedrunning communities influence broader approaches to community-driven technology development. The cultural significance of speedrunning as a form of digital folk art and performance practice established interactive media as a legitimate context for sophisticated human achievement and artistic expression. The speedrunning community's success in creating meaningful cultural practices within virtual environments helped legitimize digital culture while demonstrating the potential for technology to serve human creativity and community building rather than replacing them. The educational value demonstrated by speedrunning communities revealed the effectiveness of engagement-driven learning, peer mentorship, and systematic skill development that emerged from intrinsic motivation rather than external requirements. The informal educational systems within speedrunning communities often exceeded formal educational institutions in their ability to develop complex analytical skills, technical expertise, and collaborative capabilities. The psychological insights provided by speedrunning culture illuminated healthy approaches to perfectionism, competition, and long-term dedication that channeled obsessive tendencies toward productive outcomes while maintaining community support and mutual respect. The speedrunning community's approach to failure, improvement, and achievement provided models for psychological resilience and growth mindset that have applications beyond gaming contexts. The philosophical implications of speedrunning's obsolescence raise profound questions about the relationship between human agency and technological assistance, the nature of meaningful achievement within artificial systems, and the value of specialized cultural practices that may serve important human needs even when they appear trivial to outside observers. The transformation of gaming from static systems that could be mastered to adaptive systems that manage themselves reflects broader technological trends that affect human autonomy and creative expression. The preservation challenges associated with speedrunning culture highlight broader issues of digital heritage, cultural continuity, and the responsibility of technological societies to maintain access to cultural achievements that depend on specific technological conditions. The comprehensive documentation and archival efforts surrounding speedrunning provide models for cultural preservation that will become increasingly important as technological change accelerates. The adaptation strategies developed by speedrunning communities in response to technological disruption offer insights into community resilience, cultural evolution, and the preservation of values and practices across changing technological contexts. The speedrunning community's efforts to maintain their cultural identity while adapting to new technological realities provide models for how specialized communities can navigate fundamental changes in their operational environments. The intergenerational transmission challenges revealed by speedrunning's obsolescence illuminate broader questions about how societies maintain cultural knowledge and values across technological transitions. The difficulty of explaining speedrunning to individuals who have never experienced static, predictable games reflects general challenges of cultural communication and heritage preservation in rapidly changing technological environments. The research and academic study of speedrunning has contributed valuable knowledge about digital culture, community formation, human-computer interaction, and the social dimensions of technological practices. The interdisciplinary scholarship surrounding speedrunning has provided insights that inform understanding of contemporary digital culture and community organization. Looking toward the future from our vantage point in 2035, the legacy of speedrunning continues to influence how we think about human potential, community cooperation, and the relationship between technology and human flourishing. The values pioneered by speedrunning communities, systematic thinking, collaborative improvement, inclusive competition, and dedication to excellence, remain relevant for addressing contemporary challenges around AI integration, community building, and meaningful achievement in technological contexts. The story of speedrunning reminds us that human creativity and community building can flourish within any technological context when people are willing to accept constraints, pursue excellence, and support each other's growth and achievement. The specific practices of speedrunning may have become impossible, but the underlying human capacities and social innovations that created speedrunning culture continue to serve human flourishing in new technological contexts. As you reflect on this remarkable period of digital culture, consider how the principles that made speedrunning communities successful, curiosity, dedication, generosity, systematic thinking, and collaborative improvement, might be applied to contemporary challenges and opportunities. The speedrunners of 2025 demonstrated that meaningful achievement and community building are possible within any technological context when humans commit to supporting each other's growth and celebrating excellence. The eternal human drive to optimize, to improve, to find meaning through voluntary acceptance of challenging constraints, and to build communities around shared pursuit of excellence continues to manifest in new forms within our AI-enhanced world. While we may no longer have the specific practice of speedrunning, we retain the human capacities and cultural wisdom that made speedrunning communities so remarkable and influential. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of digital culture's most beautiful and significant communities. May your rest be peaceful, filled with appreciation for the remarkable human capacity to create meaning, achievement, and community within any set of circumstances. The story of speedrunning reminds us that human creativity and dedication can transform even the most artificial constraints into opportunities for excellence, learning, and connection. If you found value in exploring this lost art form, consider how you might apply speedrunning's principles of systematic improvement, community support, and dedicated practice to your own pursuits and communities. The speedrunners may be gone, but their legacy of optimization, collaboration, and relentless pursuit of human potential continues to inspire new forms of achievement and community in our evolving technological world. The forgotten art of speedrunning ultimately teaches us that human flourishing depends not on any particular technology or practice, but on our willingness to pursue excellence, support each other's growth, and find meaning through dedicated engagement with challenging and rewarding activities. These timeless human capacities ensure that while specific cultural practices may become obsolete, the human spirit that creates them continues to generate new forms of achievement and community worthy of our admiration and participation. If you enjoy this type of content, a like or a subscription is always appreciated. It helps our small corner of the internet grow. I invite you to share your own thoughts in the comments below.